There is a dark, empty street illuminated just by the moonlight. A guy in a white shirt with eyes wide open lies on the ground, not moving. At a little distance, there is a girl half unconscious, lying helplessly. The girl has a beautiful figure, and the white shirt she is wearing can barely hold her breasts in. A creepy man with a hood over his head is crouched by her side. He has a predator smile. "Hey," a heavy voice calls from behind. The man with the hood quickly turns around to see a tall and broad figure walking towards him with a thick stick in his hands. The tall figure, swinging his bat, asks him if it's him, the cattle prod rapist. Zhao Yu is sitting at a bar. In his past life, he accidentally fell and died. He ended up transmigrating into the body of a cop. Zhao Yu was originally the number one in the underworld. Currently one of the detectives in Q City's major crime department. He is thinking back to when he got into a fight with the team leader. He asked for an early leave, to which the leader replied by ordering everyone to work overtime and pull an all-nighter that night to investigate the cattle prod rapist case. He asked him why he can't just bring him in tomorrow. The boss was furious. Zhao Yu realizes that he probably will not be allowed to stay in the police station after that fiasco. He wondered about what to do in the future, and if he should just get back to his previous job. He lights up a cigarette and inhales, but suddenly chokes on the smoke and starts coughing, thinking to himself deliriously if this guy even knew how to smoke. He almost choked to death. Suddenly, out of the blue, a screen system pops up in the air that reads "Happy Encounter System Booting Up Success." Zhao Yu looks at the screen all astonished, wondering if this is the legendary system he always considered as nonsense in the past. He continues thinking that if this system has some use, he doesn't know anyone in this awful place. What if he dies alone of old age here? His train of thought broke when his gaze landed on a pair of thighs and tight black skinny leggings that left him in wonder. His eyes traveled further up her body to her chest, and he catches himself thinking about those legs and chest. He does a fist pump in his mind and exclaims that the girl is fucking wonderful. He reaches up to the girl and asks her what is she doing alone, but she cuts him off saying 3,000. Zhao Yu is staggered at the price and thinks that he doesn't even have 1,000 in his bank book. This is theft. He asks her if they can negotiate with the money, but a brown-haired dude put an arm around her waist, guiding her upstairs, saying that there's a luxurious suite on the other hand. Zhao Yu, all puffed up, only stares at them. He notices a man across the hall sitting and looking at him. The man had a scar beneath his eye. Zhao Yu shows him the middle finger and asked him what he was looking at. He could bet that even his toe knows that the man isn't hot shit. All of a sudden, Zhao Yu flashes back to a previous major crime department meeting where the instructor informed them that their city has had 3 serial cattle prod rape cases arise. The victims have all been beautiful young women. It's just that these women all had an unhealthy habit of sleeping around. Most of them happened near bars and similar lascivious places. The victim scratched her assaulter's face. So we have the perpetrator's blood sample. It is currently in the process of being compared. His mind takes him back to the man sitting across with a scar under his eye. Zhao Yu notices that his face is injured and thinks if he is the rapist the squad wants to apprehend. Sitting alone in a bar, he finds himself in a position thinking that the police catch bad people, so what need is there for him to uphold justice? Zhao Yu follows the guy to the alley at the bar's back door. It's dark and quiet. He could see the moon reflecting on the water spilled on the street. It had a shade of red. He carefully sneaks behind, assuring himself that when it comes to following people, he's an expert at it. He comes across a man lying in the middle of the street. He is stiff and in an unnatural position. Zhao Yu concludes that a cattle prod was used. In the distance, he sees a silhouette of a man crouched by another figure on the ground. He picks up a stick, towers behind him, and asks him if it's him. The cattle prod rapist wriggles, and in a matter of seconds Zhao Yu swings his bat and smacks the rapist's face. The story proceeds, the results are out, and the blood sample is a perfect match with the cattle prod killers. That person is the culprit behind the cattle prod rapist case. A group of people from the department gathered outside the crime department are talking about how Zhao Yu seemed like an entirely different person. They discussed how he even had a big fight with team leader Lu just now, and that he wasn't like this in the past. How could he just solve the case so easily? One of them asked if they think he is a scoundrel, a ruffian. They notice his absence and wonder where Zhao Yu went. Tossing and juggling a stash of cash, Zhao Yu walks away from the department, marveling at the fact that the department gives a bonus after catching a criminal. He decides that continuing as a detective doesn't seem too bad. Unexpectedly, the magical screen appears again. This time it read that the first happy encounter is complete. It comes along with a notice congratulating him on acquiring a prop, a hidden wiretap. It continued by saying that upon using, you are able to utilize the hidden wiretap's ability stealthily. It will not be detected by any devices. Usage time is 48 hours. Please accept it. He accepts it. His mind takes him back to when the team leader asked him how he knew that the perpetrator would show up there that night, and Zhao Yu wonders if it could have been the happy encounter system that allowed him to encounter the culprit, and if completion rate of 75% refers to the degree of completion of the happy encounter mission. He walks home pondering about if he didn't follow the rapist at the bar earlier, would the completion rate have been lower? Taking off his coat, he thinks that regardless of many chance encounters the system arranges for him, holding on to these chance encounters and resulting in a happy encounter probably relies on him in the end. With this happy encounter system, will he be able to solve similar cases in the future like he did today? Zhao Yu got in bed, closes his eye, and daydreams about the times when it won't just be a bonus. He pictures himself sitting on a couch with pretty girls on either side of his, singing his praises and fangirling over him. Later at 5 a.m. Zhao Yu is sitting at KFC eating a burger with bloodshot eyes, fuming. He laid awake all night. He chomped on his burger thinking that who could have known his roommates could snore louder than the thunder. They're both noisy and smelly, and what kind of place does this guy even live in? He contemplates renting a new place. He lights up a cigarette, puffs in, and chokes on smoke yet again until the system appears in front of him again. He looks at it with wide eyes. The screen says Happy Encounter System booting up, currently selecting your divinatory symbols. Zhao Yu reads out the screen that read DUI Sun. DUI Water Sun Wind. Smooth sailing, living and working in peace and contentment, moving heaven and earth, an omen of success. Puffing the cigarette, he thinks if the Happy Encounter System operates according to the principles of Bagua, as DUI and Sun are divination symbols, part of Bagua, used in Taoist cosmology, water and wind are a few of the elements involved. Smooth sailing? That should be a rather good divination. Zhao Yu stands at the door of KFC, still lost in his thoughts, when he hears a faint voice of a girl asking for help. Zhao Yu yanks his head in her direction, and with a painful moan, she hits the ground with a thud. She is missing a hand. The TV screen shows a woman splayed upside down on the ground with a bandage wrapped around her hand, eyes staring blankly ahead as the news went on, saying on the morning of April 22nd, a woman collapsed in front of the KFC on J Street. She was found by Officer Zhao, who was passing by. He proceeded to help the woman stop the blood flow and called both the police and the ambulance. Currently, the woman has been sent to the hospital and has been confirmed to not be in critical condition. It is said that this woman is linked to an arm dismemberment case from a year ago. The police have yet to release a definite statement. Investigations are ongoing. Shaking his head, Zhao Yu clicked his tongue and said that the 3D reenactment is not good. It doesn't showcase how heroic I was. He turns around grinning and asks the girl in the hospital bed what she thought about it. The room was deathly quiet before the girl yells at the top of her lungs, telling him there is not a single trace of the culprit's shadow even until now. All he does is just run there to ask her questions. She hostilely asked if the police is even good for anything or if it was all just for show. Zhao Yu goes silent for a while. He breaks the silence by giving a sheepish smile and telling her that her hand is rather strong. The room went silent yet again. Rage filled her up and she took off her slipper and threw it at him with her full strength, screaming at him to get out. Zhao Yu walks through the corridor with a junior member of his team. The junior tells him how she has already lost a hand and he shouldn't agitate her so much. Zhao Yu mumbles, saying he was only showing her the positive side of things, that at least she has her left hand. The junior member stares at him with a raised eyebrow and wide eyes, confused as he examines the report of the third victim, Luo Mena. It reads that the assailant first hid in her car and after rendering her unconscious they stopped the car in an alley on J Street and dismembered the hand there. The victim awoke in the car the next morning and hurriedly got off the car and ran to the nearby KFC to get help. Zhao Yu, still walking with the junior, tells her that this is where she met him. She starts by telling him that this is the famous serial hand dismembering case. It's already happened 3 times. The squad investigated for a year and couldn't find a single clue. You talked big to the team leader Lu, but if you're unable to solve the case, it won't end well. Her words make him flash back to when he argued with the team leader over why can't he just catch and bring him in tomorrow if it was only a hand dismemberment case. The leader granted him an early leave, telling him as long as Zhao Yu solves the case he will help pay for the display he broke. The junior girl reminds him not to forget if team leader Chu Ping and her team solve the case first, it would also be his loss. Zhao Yu turns his face away and looks down, mumbles, "What is there to be afraid of?" While Zhao Yu is standing in a bathroom stall, the miraculous system boots up again. He closes his eyes in relief and thinks to himself that thanks to this system he managed to not only catch the cattle prod rapist but also managed to rent the place he's currently staying at. With a determined look painted on his face, he opens his eyes thinking as long as he has this system, he is a master godly detective. He inquires the junior about how the other two victims are doing. She quickly shuffles and scans her papers and fills him in with the information that the first victim is called Gao Tian. On April 22nd a year ago she came to our city to see a concert. She ended up being knocked unconscious and having her right hand dismembered when walking in an underground passage. She continues about the second victim, Yuan Lily, who had a much stranger situation. She awoke in her own home without her hand. What's more absurd is that Zhao Yu tenses up and starts sweating nervously waiting for her to continue. The junior with a horror expression adds how the burglar-proof door in her home wasn't pried open. The culprit actually had the key. He looks at her perplexed as she went on while turning her back towards him, saying that what's strangest is that the culprit managed to avoid the cameras when escaping on all three accounts. Until now, we haven't even seen a single hair of the culprit. He's just like a ghost. Zhao Yu interrupts her with a "but." She paused, looking back with a question in her eyes as Zhao Yu goes on, asking her if he loses, why doesn't she lend him some money? Zhao Yu and the junior stroll through the market near the hospital when Junior's eyes land upon a camel, its reins being held by a man who keeps chanting group photos, group photos. It's a real camel and it's 5 yuan a picture. Her eyes bulge out as she holds Zhao Yu's arm insisting they take a picture as well when all of a sudden they hear a person scream thief right when she sees a man bolt right past her. She looks at Zhao Yu and tells him with alertness in her voice that it's a thief. "Senior brother, let's hurry up and give chase." Beside her, Zhao Yu seems unbothered as he asks if this is a joke. And says we are the major crime department, so why did they need to step in for something as trivial as catching the thief? He continues asking her about how she wanted to take a picture. Quick, the camel is waiting anxiously. His attention shifted when he suddenly hears a woman shout thief. He spots a girl wearing a tight black shirt with white skinny jeans hugging every curve of her body and walking towards him yelling thief. "My bag." Sweat drips down her face, her eyes look weary, and her high ponytail sways with every step taken. Zhao Yu freezes up. Shock and confusion cover his face. He seems to recognize her. He asks himself if it was Yao Jia. An image of him with his lover flashes in front of his eyes. They were making love. There was a picture frame of them holding each other placed on the side table next to their bed. He panics thinking if it's possible that he isn't the only one who transmigrated. He throws the papers in his hands for the junior girl to catch, sprints towards the camel, and in a second he jumps and sits on the camel grabbing its rein. The junior girl surprised asks him what he is up to and Zhao Yu tells her he is ridding the people of evil. Zhao Yu, riding the camel, whizzes past the stalls knocking off fruits and vegetables on his way to catch the thief. The thief just a few feet ahead of him looks back from the corner of his eye to see Zhao Yu speeding up on him. He freaks out and proceeds to take out the pocket knife he has in his jacket. While doing so, Zhao Yu manages to get right behind him, and when his eyes land on the knife gripped in between the thief's fingers, he smacks him on the back of his head with such force that his eyeballs almost fall out his eye sockets, while saying incredulously that he's even using a fucking knife. The thief whips his head towards Zhao Yu with a frustrated expression, asking him who he is. In response, Zhao Yu smashes a board over the thief's head, cracking it up from the middle and making his head pop out until he's wearing it like a necklace around his neck. The knife slips out of his hand and he uses the same hand to massage his head, trying to ease the pain as tears prick his eyes. With snot hanging out his nose, he once again asks Zhao Yu who exactly is he. Fierceness coating his face, he replies that he's a police officer before kicking him in the front of his face. Zhao Yu is sitting beside Yao Jia, appearing to be bored while the two officers are in front of him, one looking pissed as hell and the other trying to calm him down. The pissed officer points his finger at him, yelling at him, asking that which police officer would damage public property like that. Right now all the store owners are flooding the station police with their calls. He further yells that the alley has been trampled to this state by him, and that camel. The other officer taps his shoulder from behind him and confirms that this man is indeed from the major crime department, our sub-bureau. While the police officers are having this conversation, Zhao Yu is seated. one hand resting over his leg while the other is up in his nose looking disinterested when Yao Jia thanks him and further says how she works at a central hospital as a nurse. She also offers him to come find her if he requires anything. He peers at her and thinks although they have the same name she isn't the Yao Jia from that world. She faints at the sight of blood, so there's no way she can be a nurse. He looks down as his mind flashes back to when he's standing in a hospital corridor, while a man strolls a wheelchair away from him with a girl sitting on it telling him to scram and to leave his daughter alone. His mind jumps back to the present, and he thinks that she has already. Zhao Yu pulls his phone out and holds it in her direction. When Yao Jia stares at it with confusion, he explains, asking her if she doesn't mind. They could exchange numbers to contact each other in the future. Zhao Yu gazes at her with determination written over his face as he thinks that regardless of who she is, he can't miss out on this opportunity again. Zhao Yu is perched on the sidewalk when the miraculous system appears in front of him stating the happy encounter is complete. The next slide shows the completion rate 72%, obtained hidden tracker. Zhao Yu sips on his drink as he wonders if the happy encounters arranged by the system are random. He wanted to solve the case but it had him encounter Yao Jia. He can only utilize the divinatory symbols given by the system if he researches it. Otherwise, he'll encounter something unrelated to the case. He crushes the can in his hand with a serious look plastered on his face as he thinks to himself how he needs to rely on his own abilities to solve the case. He needs more news related to the case. Abruptly standing up, with his hands in his pockets, his long black coat swaying lightly, he says let's go to his junior that came and sat beside him at some point. She seems startled as she asks where to which he replies to piss. Since the murderer didn't leave behind any evidence, Zhao Yu thinks it was premeditated. He must have definitely followed Luo Mena for a long time. At the Crime Squad Group B's office, a girl is standing with short black hair and blue eyes. She seems offended with her arms crossed and an annoyed expression shadows her face. She asks Zhao Yu if he thinks they're slackers. She further tells him if the group isn't going on site to investigate, they are checking the surveillance. She lifts her finger at him as she further says they're actually taking action to solve the problem, unlike him, who just runs his mouth. Zhao Yu's eyes fall upon the class analysis board. He swears as moves closer to inspect it, and thinking to himself how there are so many. The girl stares at him as she thinks back to when a man once told her how she's been doing well in this period of time. The people in Group A will be assigned to her. He further told her that with her potential, if she peruses the cattle prod rapist case and solves it, she'll soon become a team leader. While Zhao Yu is still observing the case analysis board as he ponders how he did never realize that Group A had such a reckless person, he suddenly popped out of nowhere and robbed him of his case. He further thinks no wonder he was always caught by the police. They're rather meticulous. This thing is really... The girl interrupts her thoughts by mentioning how she heard he made a bet with team leader Lily that he would solve the hand dismemberment case himself. Zhao Yu's cheeks turn rose pink as thinks to himself how she's beautiful. Her expression turns smug with her hands on her hips. She asks Zhao Yu if he ran over to them here at Group B for help because he didn't have any clues. She further asks if he wants her to help him. Zhao Yu seems unimpressed when the people behind him cackled along with the words exactly. He did not like that. He corners the girl until her back is pressed against the board and puts his hand beside her head. He smirks, thanking her, but further tells her to not misunderstand. He only came because he wanted to get some information on the hand dismemberment case. He pulls his hand back and tells the girl, looking puffed up, to forget it if they're afraid of him solving the case before them and snatching it. The guys at the back were no longer cackling but were looking pissed instead at what he just says. Zhao Yu continues with the same smug expression as he tells them how he was just watching these guys work so hard and still be unable to catch him, and that he was anxious on their behalf. To this, one of the guys behind became infuriated, ready to pounce on him, saying if this fucking rascal is looking to die, the other guy telling him to forget it. Suddenly Zhao Yu could hear Chu Ping's voice through the hidden wiretap in his ear. He went on about how the culprit could avoid the surveillance cameras on the alleys on J Street. He's either very familiar with the place or stays around that area. He smirks to himself, thinking how it's good that he was smart and planted the hidden wiretap the system gave him on top of the wire board when he had his hand beside the girl's head. Other than him, he grabs the stack of papers and thinks that no one else can see this toy, and he plants the papers over the victim's face on the board. The wiretap continues how upon the investigation, Luo Mena had inhaled and had been injected with 2 types of anesthetics into her bloodstream. One of them is given to large animals as anesthesia. Zhao Yu tenses up. He thinks, veterinary medicine for animals? The wiretap went on. All the victims had their right hands cut off by an axe-like sharp weapon in one shot. The first victim was dragged into the underground passage by the assailant, maybe a strong man. The medical expert said that the assailant had avoided the hardest part of the bone, so we are unable to rule out the possibility of them being a female. Forensics found traces of adhesives in Luo Mena's car, so the assailant probably smeared a special thin protective film. In Zhao Yu's head, he was standing in front of the culprit, who was wearing a red cloak. He thinks to himself, how was he unable to even get a single glimpse of his silhouette? At the time of the crime, many traffic detectors captured images of the car, but not a single image of the silhouette of the driver could be seen. What will the silhouette reveal? The silhouette walks past him, revealing strands of silver hair. Zhao Yu whips his head back, spooked. It'll reveal that she's a woman. The wiretap kept going on. The three victims do not know each other, and so the assailant acts at random. Perhaps he is psychologically unstable and abnormal? The white-haired woman holds his hand. He thinks, why does she want to take away his hands? Back in the room, Zhao Yu says that the assailant's objective is revenge. The people around seem confused, and one asks, how does he know that? He looks back, grinning as he tells them he guessed it. A woman with ghostly pale skin and white long hair sits over the table, crossing out the name Luo Medina with a red marker. Behind her are 3 jars with a hand in each, the name written of the victims over every jar. It's 10 minutes past 12 and Zhao Yu still stands there thinking about the case while the other workers snored and drooled. The assailant takes the dismembered hands as war trophies to collect. They're hidden in a place only she knows, and whenever she takes them out to look at them, her thirst for revenge lessens a little. He continues thinking, why all the hands that were chopped off the right one? He stares at his right hand in question. He presses the cigarette between his teeth and asks the system for a prompt. Just as he inhales and violently starts coughing, the system appears again. Happy encounter system booting up success. There is a girl in denim shorts bent on her knees with half of her body hidden behind a slab. Next to her is her yellow bag with a bottle of Pepsi in it. She calls Zhao Yu and asks him where he is while telling him that she arrived there a long time ago. Zhao Yu stands behind her looking at her with a bored expression. She informs him that she is outside the police department, and at the same time she was talking to a kitty behind the slab asking it to come to her. He tells her that he got it, and that he can see her. The girl has short black hair and electric blue eyes. She looks confused for a second but realizes he must be standing behind her. She sits back up and looks back at him with a smile. The kitty looked at him too. While taking out the bottle of Pepsi from her bag, he asks her what's wrong for her to come running to find him even though it wasn't even 7 yet, and he was tired after the all-nighter. She tugs at his shirt sheepily and says, "About that, are we partners now?" He stops and looks at her for a second and flashes back to when he caught her fishing and stealing. She admitted that she was wrong and requested him not to tell her dad about it. Zhao Yu agreed on one condition, that she splits the stolen money 50-50 with him. She looks at him with a disappointed face and asks him if he extorted her money just to rent her dad's place. He gives a big smile and tells her not to make it sound so horrible, they're just partners. Zhao Yu thinks of when he stood outside of KFC on J Street and the system appeared. He didn't think that divination would be referring to this girl, on the account of smoothly renting the place. Zhao Yu catches the girl looking at him with eyes full of hope and asks her what's wrong. She asks him to go to the parent-teacher conference with her. He spits Pepsi out of his mouth at hearing the words. Zhao Yu tells her to stop joking and turns the other way as a sign of refusing to go. She jumps on his back from behind, wrapping her legs around his waist, and takes him by surprise when she tells him that she had already intercepted the message for her dad and sent it to his phone. Zhao Yu tells her if her dad finds out he will kick him out, and he would have no place to sleep in then. She further clings on to him and calls him dad, begging him to help her, and says that if he has no place to sleep then she will give him her room. She looks at him with puppy eyes and asks him if he agrees. He gives her a dry look and tells her he won't go even if she calls him her father. Later in Q City at the second middle school's parent-teacher conference, in the music block's apartment, Zhao Yu sat with his head in his hand looking like he was done with life. The girl did convince him, or more like cornered him into coming by telling him that they're locusts on the same rope. If her dad goes to the parent-teacher conference, and her skipping classes and fishing is revealed to him, she won't be able to make any money. She added the fact that he's a police officer, and things will be bad if that happens. She is a lying brat. Zhao Yu is sitting there in the front row waiting for it to end. There is a young woman with beautiful hands playing piano on the stage. He thinks they were nice-looking hands and brainstormed on what he should use to dismember them. Another woman is standing next to the piano and praises her piano-playing skills. She replies by saying that was nothing and that she hadn't played in N years. She even participated in a piano competition here 20 years ago, and almost managed to enroll in a conservatory for the first time. If she had worked better back then, she might have been able to live a better life than her current one. Back then, the second middle school was our city's music sanctuary and had produced many talents. Zhao Yu carefully listens to their conversation and a number of thoughts rush through his head. He remembers that the second victim, Yuan Lily, was a university music professor. Her piano skills are most definitely not mediocre. The first victim, Gao Tian, had also been attending a concert on the day she had her hand chopped off. He picks up his phone to call the junior girl. He wonders about a possibility. She answers the call and asks him what he wants to check. He wants her to get information on a piano. He ends the call and continues thinking if both of the victims had something to do with the piano, then could the third victim, Luo Mena, also. His thoughts are interrupted by his phone ringing loudly in the quiet auditorium and everyone looks at him annoyed. He attends the call and asks her to speak while people in the auditorium talked about whose father he was and called him uneducated for disturbing the performance like that. She drops the information on him like a bomb. She tells him that the concert Gao Tian attended was a piano performance tour. He lets out a loud curse. She marvels and wonders about how he knew they had something to do with the piano. The crowd murmurs about whose father he is. Every word that he says is so vulgar. Someone assumes that his child definitely must not have learned good things from him. They're probably the kind to score first from the back of their exams. Another voice unbelievably said they saw him come together with Jiang Xiaoqing, the second middle school academic tyrant who hasn't fallen out of the level's top 3. Suddenly the way they talked about him changes. The voices start going on about how he is so young and knows how to change his child right. A voice even commented on how handsome he was. Ignoring all of the murmurs, Zhao Yu asks the junior girl about Luo Mena. She tells him that all 3 of them are grade 10 in the piano. It's just that they took their grading exam at different times. He orders her to check their piano learning history and their classmates in the same period as them. He concludes that since it's because of revenge, the assailant definitely has to know them and that they play the piano. It's highly likely that she plays the piano too. But he remembers that the 3 of them don't recognize each other. He thinks hard about how they could have encountered the assailant, and suddenly what the pianist playing earlier said. She mentioned participating in a piano competition here 20 years ago. They must have encountered the assailant through a competition. The assailant is also an expert in the piano and has participated in the same piano competition as the victims. She was squeezed out by them and hence harbors hatred for them. As such, she is now taking her revenge. The principal clears his throat and continues his speech talking about the aim of today's parent-teacher conference, but Zhao Yu's phone rings again, cutting him off again. The principal's face goes dark as he gets super mad about how Zhao Yu interrupted him again and wouldn't put his phone on silent. The junior girl exclaims that she checked the records and all 3 of them participated in their city's 10th high school piano competition, and all 3 of them got into the finals. Zhao Yu grins with satisfaction on hearing what she just said. He inquires about where the competition was held and who else participated in it, to which she replies by informing him that the competition took place 18 years ago, and that she will require some time to dig deeper about the participants. She also tells that the competition was held in their city at the second middle school's music auditorium. Zhao Yu is flabbergasted at the fact that it happened right here. While he is still on the call, the principal of the school stomped towards him, angrily complaining about his voice, but he is taken by surprise when Zhao Yu throws a hand around his shoulder and asks him about the name list of those who participated in the 10th piano competition. With the killer's look on his face, he thinks to himself that the culprit is definitely somewhere in that name list. The principal leads them into the file room at the school. Looking almost nervous, he asks Zhao Yu if he could just forget about it. The worker looking for the file joins him, telling him how it was so long. There isn't much use for keeping competition records that old, so it's possible that it may have been thrown away a long time ago. Zhao Yu sits by the window relaxed as he tells both of them that he is not in a rush and to continue searching. He further adds how he will accompany them. The principal and the worker have tears streaming down their faces as they question how much longer they have to continue searching for. Suddenly his phone rings again, and he checked his phone to find a text from the junior girl informing him that she has acquired the competition's name list. He puts his phone down with a proud smile on his face. Zhao Yu and the junior girl go to the house of Zhao Shan, the one who got a 10th place in the piano competition. A pregnant lady stands with her hand resting over her round belly as she says that the competition is rather grand. The province leaders are all in attendance. All judges are also well-respected university professors. She continues with when the top 3 were all chosen by the renowned schools, the 4th to the 6th place were all left to be chosen by the normal schools. For the below 6th place like me were treated the same as normal examinees. The junior expresses her gratitude for the information and the lady replies with a warm welcome. Zhao Yu finds himself thinking back to what the pianist lady had said back in the auditorium. He wonders if because of the competition the assailant was made to live a life she didn't want to live. The junior girl with a nice body storms away with the name list tightly gripped in her hand, wrinkled. She is frustrated over how she was wrong again. Out of those in the top 10, the lady was supposed to be the most suspicious, but her stomach is so big, so how could she go and dismember hands? She also says if the assailant isn't on the name list they would have to screen the entire list of competitors again. Zhao Yu grins and folds his arms behind his neck and goes on about how that is a good idea and that he would just leave that arduous task to her. Tears well up the junior girl's eyes as she asks him if he was waiting for her to make a fool out of herself. Zhao Yu inches closer and puts an arm around her shoulder, telling her why not. He would just go and nab her straight away. The junior girl is surprised. She lets him know that he has changed a lot. Zhao Yu straightens his back and comes out with how he was a gangster in his previous life and had just transmigrated, so he isn't used to his identity as a cop yet. She grabs his face and squishes it. She tells him that she meant how his eye bags had gotten deeper. She advises him to get some sleep as it seemed like he had barely gotten any sleep these few days. His mind would clear up after he gets some sleep and he'll be able to get some leads. She didn't stop there. She tells him that he must be heading in the right direction, and the hand dismembering case definitely has something to do with this competition. All of a sudden the system appears again out of thin air right in front of him. This time it read, "This happy encounter is complete. With a completion rate of 88% you have obtained an all-purpose key." He thinks that it's such a high completion rate, and if going to the parent-teacher conference and finding the lead to solve the case related to the system, he decides on going back and activate the system once more to try. He tells the junior to head back and rest too and that he hoped to see her at the station tomorrow. It occurs to him that if the assailant acts like they did last year and waits 3 days before dismembering a hand again, there most likely will be a 4th victim tomorrow. He must catch them before then. Zhao Yu wakes up by a loud knock at his door at 5 a.m. A thin voice spoke from behind the door that she knew he was inside. She heard him coughing in the middle of the night. He wonders if it was Jian Shaoqing. He remembers what happened at the parent-teacher conference that day when he asked the principal for the name list showing him his ID as a police officer. He panics thinking of how the parent-teacher conference fell through, and she must definitely be here to berate him. As swift as the wind he whooshes out of bed and hides under it as the kid casually tells him if he won't open the door she will do it herself. With a click, the door is unlocked and opens. Jiang swings open the doors and walks into his room. It is dark and empty with no sign of Zhao Yu. She wonders where he is. She stealthily walks towards his bed and bends down and pulls his bed sheets up just to find the underside of the bed empty too. She realizes he's not under the bed either and starts walking towards the balcony with the same question in her head. Where did he go? She slams open the door but sees he isn't on the balcony either. She loses her patience and yells, calling him a bastard, and leaves his room threatening him, asking him to wait. Zhao Yu peeks out from the balcony of the room next door and questions himself why did he not remember the kid was his landlord. She has his room key. He jumps from that balcony onto his own. He pulls the handle only to find out that the kid had locked it from inside. He stands there frustrated and clueless about how to get inside. An idea pops up in his mind. He contemplates getting out from next door. He recalls the time when the landlord informed him that he has 4 beautiful ladies staying next to him, and that one of them goes to work at night. He mentioned all of them being superb. Zhao Yu switches the balcony again. It was quiet there and a few garments were hung on a rope, left to dry. He's used to this and it isn't 6 p.m. yet, so she definitely hasn't gotten off work yet. He carefully opens the door to the room. There was pin-drop silence. He closes his eyes in relief and nods as he realizes there is indeed no one home. He had just taken a few steps when a woman in a red deep-necked dress appears in front of him, and a curse leaves his mouth. The both of them stare at each other in shock. The girl in the red dress that barely covered her long legs let out a muffled scream when Zhao Yu clasps her mouth tightly so she wouldn't alert anyone, just as he thinks that he won't be able to prove his innocence this time around. He looks at her questioningly when she exclaims if it's really him. She delicately removed his hand from her mouth, revealing bright cherry lips, as she tells him it's her, and if he remembers her. She further explains how he saved her from the cattle prod rapist. Zhao Yu's mind flashes back to when he once saved a girl in the alley as he remembers it was her. He steps away from the girl and expounds with his hands stuffed in his pockets how he lives next door and was locked out on the balcony. He thought no one was home, so he wanted to go through it to get out. Who would have thought she was home? With a cigarette resting in between her cherry lips, she struts away casually, speaking about how she would usually be out for work at this time, if not for that event, leaving a shadow over her heart. She lights up the cigarette, inhales, and puffs out the smoke, looking straight into Zhao Yu's eyes as she tells him she wanted to rest a little. Zhao Yu had nothing to say and stared back. She smiled as she says that there was something that bothered her. She places her hand over his shoulder as a support to reach up to his ear and whispers, asking him how he knew that rapist would make a move on her. Was it a policeman's instinct, or? She leaves her sentence incomplete. Zhao confesses how there was no woman as pretty as her there. Perhaps, just like the criminal, he appreciates her beauty too. She chuckles and gently pushes him, making him fall backward on the bed. She acknowledges with a smile how Officer Zhao sure is experienced in the field of romance. She crawls on top of him, informing him that her roommate will only get back in the afternoon. She leans her face down to his, claiming it's a rare chance, and suggests that they should do something, but gets interrupted by a ping of her phone. It lights up just when Zhao Yu's eyes fall upon the lock screen showing her playing the piano while smiling softly into the camera. He sits up and mentions the picture. She tucks a strand behind her ear and reveals how back then she was still in school. With her phone in his hand, he asks her with a grin if she knows how to play the piano. In response, she presses him back down onto the mattress, smiling seductively, and asks if he thought the opposite. She further goes on about how her mom forced her to learn the piano the moment she could understand speech. She's grade 10, and she even participated in her city's second middle school piano competition when in high school. A strand of her luscious hair falling onto his nose when he suddenly flips her, him being on top as he asks her which one. She wraps her arms around his neck and answers the 10th one before asking what's wrong. He smirks, thinking it's the same one as the assailant. He leans down until their noses almost touched and inquires if she recognizes Gao Tian, Yuan Lily, or Luo Mena. He adds how they were ranked 4th, 5th, and 6th. She silences him by pressing her finger over his lips and tells him that doesn't. That was the finals. How could she have been that good? She didn't even get into the top 20. She hooks her finger on the inside of Zhao's shirt's neckline, pushing it, revealing extra skin. She drapes her arms around his neck, pulling him down closer to her. As she asks him why did he bring up a case, he replies with another question, asking her if she knows about the hand dismemberment case. She abruptly sits halfway up and confirms if it's the one the whole internet has recently been making a fuss over. He admits how all those who had their hands cut off had participated in that competition. The girl clings to him and asks if she will too. She couldn't finish her sentence. Zhao holds her head over his shoulder and tells her that currently, all the targets had made it into the finals, and to tell him if she remembers any details regarding the competition, regardless if it's about anyone or anything, only like that they can solve the case earlier. The girl starts speaking that if he puts it like that, there was indeed something strange that happened that year. The houses was passed in a blur. Zhao is driving with a cigarette dangling between his lips with Junior Li Bainey perched on the seat beside him. Zhao confirms if it was a child prodigy, to which Li Bainey replies with a yes. She goes on about how Li Dan was a famous child prodigy in the country before the competition. She was a grade 10 at the age of 12. She was originally a very strong contender, but suddenly withdrew from the competition a day before the finals. She looks worried as she suggests that someone possibly bribed her so that she withdraws from the competition and they can take her place. Zhao casually adds how he heard that Li Dan's family isn't too well off. Her family had to sell off their ancestral residence in order to let her learn the piano. He pats Li Bainey's head while mentioning how she only had one chance in her life, so regardless of how much money she was offered, she wouldn't have accepted. He wonders that as long as they get into the top 3, their lives will change. Something must have happened during that competition. Li Bainey asks what they should do now. There's no record of the information of their entire family at the police station. It's like their family vanished overnight. In response, he asks her if there's someone protecting Li Xinhua, most likely the next victim. Li Beinei confirms that she dispatched a team the moment he told her about it. She asks if the assailant will really make a move against her today. Zhao grins and tells her to go to the station to search for the professional and looking for missing people. Who knows, he might be able to find Li Dan's whereabouts. Li Beinei asks nervously if he's talking about Zhang Jingfeng. Looking for him for help may cause a dent in his wallet. When Zhao questions her why, she tells him he's the kind of person to only work when benefits are given. She further adds that the people in the station have been driven mad by him countless times. He has been given the name Crafty Loach. Zhao finds this interesting as he speeds the car, saying that he's going to bring her to catch a loach. Zhao enters through double doors to see 4 men in front of him, one seated on a snooker table casually grinning at him as he asks Zhao what wind has brought him here. Zhao smiles from ear to ear with excitement coating his face. Zhao Yu and the junior girl stand before Zhang Jingfeng. He asks Zhao Yu what brings him here. The junior girl fluffs up and comments on how he clearly knows the reason why he was there, and yet he is asking. Earlier, Zhao Yu had called him asking for his assistance in solving the case. Zhang Jingfeng asked him to wait for him at the station as he had an upset stomach then. That didn't stop Zhao Yu from visiting him. He demands good news regardless of whether Zhang can help him or not. Zhang Jingfeng looks unbothered by the situation and is bent on a pool table ready to strike as he asks Zhao Yu why he is in a rush regarding the public. His men laugh. Zhao Yu stares into the air with a bored expression as Zhang Jingfeng's men go on about he is a stupid cunt and taking the case as if his family members are dying and how he is rigid. The junior seems furious at their words. Zhang Jing invites Zhao Yu to play 2 rounds of snooker with him. He goes on about how Zhao Yu is an expert. Zhao Yu asks him how big they were playing. Zhang Jingfeng claims they're making a lot for their salaries, so they should set 50 a goal. Zhao Yu stands with the cue stick in his hands and mutters, wondering how many can he hit. Zhang Jingfeng tells him he can hit as many as he likes. In a flash, Zhao Yu strikes the table with the cue stick and it snaps in 2 with a loud crack. 50, he says. In the next second, he lifts his knee and breaks another stick in half by smashing the stick on his knee. 100, followed by 2 more cracks and snaps. He counts 150, 200. The huge muscular man among the men of Zhang Jing grabs Zhao Yu by the collar and asks him if he has a death wish. Zhao Yu punches him hard in the face and he staggers back. Zhao Yu tells him that his mouth stinks. Zhao Yu asks the muscular man if his mama even taught him to brush his teeth before sleeping and kicks him in the groin, which makes him fall to his knees and curl up in a ball. He lets out a curse and asks him if he knows where he just kicked. He yells at the other men to beat Zhao Yu up and kill him. Zhao Yu stands with his hands in his pockets and casually asks the junior girl to go stand in a corner and not move. He has a killing calm expression on his face. He cracks his knuckles and says it's just that he hasn't moved around in a long time. All 3 men charge towards him at once with sticks in their hands. With a smack, he punches the first guy in the face with the back of his fist. He throws an uppercut onto the next guy's chin and a left jab onto the third guy's jaw. He kicks the first guy again, which sends him flying and he hits the ground. In a matter of seconds, the guys who came at Zhao Yu are now all knocked out as Zhao Yu rubs his wrist with a winning grin plastered on his face. Zhang Jingfeng stands by a wall shivering. He laughs nervously and trembles, calling him Brother Zhao as Zhao Yu throws an arm around his shoulder. Zhao Yu promises him a treat of drinks in the future. Zhang Jingfeng refuses it, saying there's no need for it, and that helping Brother Zhao do work comes to him naturally. They walk out of the place. Zhao Yu and the junior stand in an empty street, right outside Li Dan's home. The junior says this should be the place. Earlier, Zhang Jingfeng filled them in by telling them that everyone gets sick, and no matter how they change their names and surnames, their medical records will never change. He continued that 50 years ago, due to a heart attack, her father made quite a few trips to the hospital. In May last year, her mother was hospitalized due to a tumor. The junior girl said that after that they didn't leave the city at all. Zhang Jingfeng said that this is where she lives, but they could have inputted a false address. Zhao Yu looks at the street and thinks that the place is around 100 meters away from where the 3rd victim had her hand dismembered. In his head, the girl in the red cloak walks the street with a shadow behind her that kept getting bigger and then suddenly disappeared. She passes him by and enters the building through the door. Zhao Yu knocks at the door and without any time wasted, someone opens it. The door creaks open, and an old lady appears showing half of her face, weariness coating her expression. The junior holds out her ID and greets the old lady, then asks her if Lee Dan lives there. The old lady invites them in. The junior is sitting on the side of the bed just as the old lady offers her a glass of water on a plate, which she accepts and thanks her in return. All the while Zhao Yu is standing with his back to them. He questions the lady if her daughter played the piano in the past. The lady, the plate still in her hands, replies that the piano is a big taboo in their family. They never brought it up after her father passed away. The junior asks worriedly if something happened. The base of the plate reflects the old lady's distressed face just when she says how Dandan has always been a child who brought this much credit. In the past, she won prizes in city, country, and province-level piano competitions. 10 years ago, in the round in second middle school, she had gotten third place in the preliminary round, securing an entry into the finals. A flashback shows Lee Dan standing with her long white hair, as her teacher asks her if she's sure she's going to choose that one, to which she replies with a yes, teacher, determination plastered over her face. The lady continues that because she felt that she didn't have that big of a gap between her and the two in front of her, she decided to raise the difficulty in the finals, where they allowed the pianists to choose their own pieces. The sponsors had arranged for piano practice a day before the finals and at the very last moment. When everyone had left, Lee Dan went to practice. Her parents were the only ones in the audience, watching her play with smiles planted on their faces. While she was much immersed in playing, she released a painstaking cry. All over the piano and the floor was blood. She was lying all crumbled up onto the floor as her parents rushed towards her. After that, her parents stood, red, covering their surroundings, as the school's nurse wearing a mask told them that the middle finger on her right hand was cut off by a sharp object, affecting the tendon and joint. You guys better find the tiny half of her finger to be reattached, or else it'll be left deformed. To a kid who treated the piano as her life, a deformed finger was akin to giving her a death sentence. Her father hurriedly rushed back to the auditorium of the second middle school to search for it. The blood on the piano was all gone. The piano had been wiped clean. And the chunk of Dandan's finger couldn't be found either. It was missing too. Tears streamed down her mother's cheeks as she covered her face with her hands. The sponsors did not wish for Dandan's situation to affect the other participants, so they suppressed the news of it until the end of the competition. But by then the police were unable to find any evidence. It was said that the only thing which cut off her finger was a sharp blade. The blade was placed side up in between the black keys by someone. It was in a place people rarely would use, but Dandan would press on it due to the piece she chose to play. It was also a note it was heavily pressed on. The person who placed the blade was jealous of Dandan's talent, and was worried that they would lose. A black shadow standing behind her as she played the piano. Although Dandan's hand recovered a little after undergoing physiotherapy, she would always tremble upon seeing a piano. Back to the present, Dandan's mother is sitting on a chair weeping as Junior is trying to calm her down. Her mother tells them that not only was she hurt physically, but she was also hurt emotionally. Her father's heart disease had also relapsed. As a result, he was hospitalized multiple times and passed away in the end. Zhao Yu is still standing with hands in his pockets, thinking to himself that currently, all this information points to her being the most likely suspect. It's just that, they're still lacking evidence. His gaze lands upon a door locked up by a chain and a lock. He asks the lady whose room is that. The lady meekly replies it's Dandan's room. He stalks towards the door as he questions her again if she went to work. The lady tells him yes, she followed the troupe to perform in the village, so she won't be back for a few days. Zhao Yu ponders how she works in a theater troupe. The thin film the assailant applied when in the victim's car was the same as the one theater troupes often use. He tells the lady the truth that how her daughter is involved in the case. He straightens the wire around a key he had and tries to open the lock while he goes on about how someone wishes to harm her. Both the lady and Junior look at him with shock. He further explains how it's possible that it is the same person as the one who planted the blade back then. She might have some evidence in her possession, so he needs to take a look at her room. The mother mentions how Dandan doesn't like people going into her room. If she finds out, she'll be angry. Zhao Yu pops the lock open as he tells them to not worry. They're doing this just to ensure her safety. They'll make it seem like no one entered her room. And that they're professionals. As he opens the door, a skull pops in front of them. Junior shrieks and throws herself onto Zhao Yu. He mumbles in her ear that she's mistaken, it's a show piece, and to take a closer look if she doesn't believe him. The lady asks Junior if she got scared by it as she clings on to Zhao Yu like a koala. He looks over at the books about anesthetic and dissection study. He asks the lady if her daughter studied medicine before. The lady tells him no. She has worked as an assistant in a veterinary clinic before though. Zhao Yu thinks back to when the wiretap spoke into his ear about how upon investigation, Luo Mena had inhaled and had been injected with 2 types of anesthetics into her bloodstream. One of them is given to large animals as anesthesia. All the victims were given veterinary anesthesia before their hands were dismembered. He wonders how there's not even a single table in this room. He pulls up the bed, looks inside, puts it back down, and tells the others that he's found it. Her daughter is indeed in possession of some very important information that will help the police. He asks the lady to wait in the living room as he and his colleague have to take pictures to document the evidence. The lady asks if her daughter will be in danger while leaving the room. Zhao tells her not to worry and that he'll tell his colleagues to protect her. Junior closes the door with a sigh and asks him why he has to keep lying to her. She gasps when Zhao shows her what is under the bed. There were hands in 3 separate jars with a ladder, rope, and other stuff. Zhao Yu and the junior both stand and stare at their discovery. 3 hands are placed carefully in 3 different jars. The junior looks at Zhao Yu with wonder in her eyes and exclaims while calling him amazing and asking him how he knew there was something wrong with her room. He explains that it was strange in and of itself that she had to put a padlock on her room door despite it being her home. Back then, Li Dan injured her right hand, just like the victims. The junior is listening to him attentively as he goes on telling that her mother had an operation in May, which was right after the 2 hand dismemberment cases happened. Zhao Yu didn't stop there. After 9 months of chemotherapy, her condition stabilized, as such she decided to commit the 3rd hand dismemberment. He tells her that right now the evidence they were missing has resurfaced. He takes a closer look at the photographs attached under her bed. The photographs were of a surveillance camera, an underground passage, Yuan Lily, Gao Tian, a urine pail, and a ladder. He concludes that these were all prepared for the dismemberment. Now they have an explanation for the strange modus operandi of the case. The junior looks slightly confused. Zhao Yu continues. On the 24th, Li Dan went to each the same concert as the first victim, Gao Tian. After it ended, she followed her. After knocking Gao Tian unconscious, she dragged her into the power room. She crouched by her side in order to cut her hand off. After dismembering her hand, she wasn't in a rush to leave the scene. She placed Gao Tian's hand into a jar full of formalin and hid it. She only went to retrieve it 2 months later the case took place. She then hid in the vent and waited until dawn. After diving into the vent, she mixed in with the workers by dressing up as them and left via the stadium. On the same day, she went straight to the rooftop on the opposite block of the second victim, Yuan Lily. She stayed there until the night of the 25th. She packed food along with her to keep her sustained. Then she used the ladder to climb onto Yuan Lily's rooftop and sneaked up to her door with the help of a rope. She had already made a copy of the victim's house key. She opened the door silently. She already had a wiretap installed long ago in Lily's home, so Li Dan knew when she was home alone. She enters her bedroom and silently stands, towering over her, and watches her with hatred in her eyes as she sleeps. She prepares for the dismemberment. After cutting off Yuan Lily's hand, she hid underneath the floor for 7 days before leaving. Meanwhile, the police investigated Yuan Lily's home for any sign or evidence of her. She even had a bucket of urine prepared. She didn't leave a single trace behind. The junior starts, aghast, about the patience Li Dan must have to pull this, and just how much hatred she must have for the victims. She adds that back then, only 1 person hurt her. She asks if she has to cut off everyone's hands before her revenge can be fulfilled. Zhao Yu's attention shifted as his eyes land upon an image of a water gun. He looks at the picture and wonders about what the use of it must be. Next to the picture of the water gun was attached a picture of a grave. A grave that was caved in. The junior points at a picture. Xiao Jiang is an entrepreneur who immigrated to Australia. She tries to make sense of why there was so much information about this person. Suddenly it clicks to Zhao Yu that Xiao Jiang just might Xiao Lulu, who was 3rd on the name list. He realizes that she is the next victim. There is a plane ticket to Q City Airport attached and the plane lands at 3 p.m. He hurriedly takes out his phone to check the time, and it was 4:15 already. Panic takes over Zhao Yu and he lets out a curse. He sprints out of the building and toward the car yelling that he is going to go, and find Li Dan. He orders the junior to stay there and photograph the evidence, and hurry back to the station to get back up. The junior takes out her phone and reads something that stuns her. She abruptly runs after him, telling him that she just checked and Xiao Jiang was indeed the Xiao Lulu who got 3rd place in the competition 3 years ago. She chases after him, continuing that she was chosen by Ethnic Strings Conservatory to study abroad and became an entrepreneur by selling musical instruments. She had her name changed. He swings open the door of the car and gets in. The junior thinks she is still in Australia. Zhao Yu reveals to her that the grave belongs to Xiao Lulu's father. He changes the gear of the car and forces his foot down on the race pedal with full strength. Zhao Yu continues saying, she then forged official documents to give to Xiao Lulu, saying a hole had somehow appeared in the grave, luring her back to the country to cut off her hand. The junior is dumbfounded on hearing this. Zhao Yu drives away, telling her there is no time. Xiao Lulu's plane already landed an hour ago, asking her to hurry. The junior calls his name, asking her where he was going to look for her. Xiao Lulu stands in a black leather dress with a fur coat wrapped around her. She is in the graveyard, next to caved-in grave on her father. Little does she know that Li Dan is standing behind her with a sharp axe in her hand, ready to dismember. Li Baini, the junior girl, stays connected on a call with Zhao Yu. She tells him that they can't locate Li Dan's phone, nor can they find her location. Zhao Yu orders to search for Xiao Lulu's location. Li Baini asks for some time and disconnects the call. The signal light on the road turns red. Zhao Yu brainstorms where Li Dan could possibly dismember Xiao Lulu's hand when suddenly it occurs to him that if Xiao Lulu doesn't have anything else on, she might go to the cemetery immediately upon touching down. There are no surveillance cameras there, which makes it the perfect Han dismembering spot. He hits the race paddle and races past a kid standing with his grandmother who is crossing the road. He crosses the traffic light without applying brakes, completely ignoring the red light. The kid tugs at his grandmother's clothes, telling her that the uncle ran the red light, and the grandmother assures him that the bad guy will be caught by the police. Xiao Lulu lies on the floor, unconscious. Li Dan had knocked her out, and now is standing right next to her with an axe raised in her hands, ready to strike. It starts getting dark and there was no one else around in the cemetery. Just as she swings the axe, Zhao Yu yells at the top of his lungs, asking her to stop as he charges towards her at full speed. Li Dan, with shock written over her face, turns around and sees him. She drops the axe and starts running as if her life depends on it. Zhao Yu orders her to stop right there, but she didn't until she hits a dead end, a wall. Panting, Zhao Yu starts talking to her. He comments on how good at running she was. He takes out a pair of shackles and twirls them around his finger, mocking her as he asks her to run. Li Dan stands still facing the wall. Zhao Yu did not know what awaits him. Li Dan whirled with a gun in her hand and shoots at him. In a split second, there is a blue long dart impaled in his left shoulder. Zhao Yu immediately understood that the water gun was an anesthetic gun. His vision starts to blur, and the peripheries of his sight started to go dark, and he sees Li Dan escaping. Zhao Yu falls to the ground, face first, with a loud thud. Zhao Yu starts gaining consciousness back at the faint sounds of two girls talking. Li Baini, the junior girl, asks if he was alright. She is answered by an unfamiliar voice telling her not to worry, it's just a fast-acting dose of anesthesia. Zhao Yu wonders about whose voice is it. The voice continues saying it was a very small dose, so he'll be able to wake up in a few minutes. He blinks his eyes open as his vision clears to a beautiful girl in white and black. As he remembers what happened earlier, his eyes fling wide open and he got onto his 2 feet rapidly. Li Baini exclaims that he's up. The doctor warns him not to get up so quickly as the medicine's effects haven't fully. She couldn't finish her sentence as Zhao Yu stumbles and falls with his face pressed against the doctor's breasts, knocking both of them down, Zhao Yu landing on top of her. Li Baini calls out his name from behind, asking him what he was doing and to get up. Zhao Yu sits back up, massaging his head and processing what just happened. The doctor extended her hand for him to grab and help her get up. Zhao Yu takes her by the hand and pulls her toward him and holds her in his arms. She tells about what she heard at the office, that Group A had a ruffian detective join them, and it turns out that it was him, Zhao Yu. She passes a gentle smile. Zhao Yu looks down at her and immediately apologizes for what just happened. Zhao Yu whirls and asks Li Baini about Xiao Lulu and if her hand is okay. She tells him that Xiao Lulu was alright. The proxy team leader of Group A, Li Chengge, is there too. He asks Zhao Yu about why he didn't tell them about his lead earlier. It'll be hard to catch the assailant if she leaves the city. The girl from Group B passes an order to go inform people to check the checkpoints at the junctions. The team leader has more to say. He asks Zhao Yu if he is still concerned about the bet he made with him, and called him a rascal. Zhao Yu looks at him with an expressionless face while Li Baini, the junior girl angrily tells him that Zhao Yu had just discovered the lead and that they didn't know if it was the right development. They could have misled everyone. The doctor speaks in Zhao Yu's favor. With her beautiful smile, she says if it wasn't for little Zhao Yu being the first one to reach the scene, Xiao Lulu's hand might have been already cut off. He had been shot with the anesthesia and very dangerously so. A loud cackle from Zhao Yu interrupted her, and everyone's eyes are saucers as they look at him with questions in their eyes. Zhao Yu gives a devil's grin and starts walking, saying that they agreed on it the last time. As long as I caught the assailant of the hand dismemberment case, that he would pay for the display. Zhao Yu moves past the team leader, smirking. The girl of Group B, confused, asks Wang Fei, the doctor, to go check if the anesthesia gave rise to some mental illness. Zhao Yu starts walking in the direction of the graves. Li Beini says to him that the exit is in the opposite direction and asks where he was going. The people around laughed at him and mocked him by questioning if he suffered any shock and assuming that the medicine's effects haven't worn off yet. No one seems to get what he is up to. Zhao Yu, unbothered by people talking around him, walks with determination until he reaches a grave. He lifts his leg up, and there were more murmurs from the people around as they wondered about what he was doing or if he was unsteady on his feet. Zhao Yu stomps his feet on top of the grave with great force, and the grave cracks open. He jumps in. Everyone around is struck by panic and rushes toward the grave. As they look down the hole, they find Zhao Yu crouched with his hand around Li Dan's shoulder. He yelled at them to hurry and take a picture of him. Li Dan had a defeated look painted on her face. The crime department puts shackles around Li Dan's wrists, arresting her. They take her away as she walks with her head hung low in defeat. The culprit is finally caught. Li Beini asked Zhao Yu how he knew Li Dan was hiding in the grave. Zhao Yu sweats nervously. He thinks that he cannot tell her that he put a hidden tracker on Li Dan's ass before he fainted. Zhao Yu considered the fact that Li Dan previously hid on the roof for days in order to dismember a hand. She might be hiding nearby this time too. Li Beini further questions him about how he knew that it was the very grave, and how could he find the right grave in a second. Zhao Yu stands there silent, nervously trying to come up with an answer. Li Beini claims that she doesn't think Zhao Yu passed out at all. He just watched as she went in to hide. Zhao Yu looks at her dully before he starts clapping and telling her that she guessed right. The system boots up again with a completion rate of 95%. It comes up with a new prop this time, a lie detector. Li Beini passes a proud smile and adds that it was very naughty of him to put on a show for the team leader Lu and Chu Ping. Zhao Yu looks up at the system and thinks to himself that it is a very high completion rate, and it was all thanks to the hidden tracker, as he tosses the lie detector in his hands. 3 props will definitely have great use in the future. Zhao Yu is sitting in the interrogation room at the crime department. He fidgets his fingers as he thinks about today morning's divination. The system reads lightning strikes in the middle of water. The host's wealth takes a hit, startled by a sudden influx of money, unable to differentiate between the 5 elements. He wonders if it was referring to the assailant wanting to meet him. Li Dan sits across the table with her hair curtaining her face. In a low voice, she asks him which one was it. Zhao Yu doesn't get what she asked about. Li Dan slams her hands on the table as she gets up and yells, asking him who it was who placed the blade in the piano. She was missing half of her middle finger. Zhao Yu says she didn't know who it was, and yet she chose to dismember their hands. She grits her teeth and replies that they took up her time to practice the piano. Her voice raises as she continues, saying all those who entered the finals have to take responsibility. It must have been one out of the 3 of them who confessed to harming her, which resulted in him catching on to her. Zhao Yu asks if she thinks that the only way she could have been tracked down would be because of the victims confessing and not because he has other ways. She has too much confidence in herself. Li Dan listens carefully with wide eyes as he went on, saying that the 3 of them didn't confess or mention anything about harming her. He had connected the dots and discovered that they had all participated in the same competition and found her home. Li Dan loses it and says that it's impossible. Even if he investigated her, he couldn't have found the location of her home. Zhao Yu tells her that he found her through her mother's hospitalization records. She seems confused and says even with that she didn't specify anything in the files as to which grave I would hide in. He turns the other way so Li Dan doesn't notice the sweating beating down his temple and tells her that her anesthesia was expired. He can't tell her that he placed a tracker on her ass. Li Dan couldn't believe it. She stares at the ceiling as tears well up in her eyes. She cries, saying her dad had placed all his hopes on her, and yet she couldn't do anything. Once her dad passed away, her mom got cancer. She had nothing. Zhao Yu was out of words to say. He gets out of his seat and starts walking towards the door. He calls out her name and asks her if she thought of her mom before she tried to get revenge and about how her mom would feel after she loses her, if she would be able to live on, and who would look after her then. She was speechless. She listened to him as grief takes over her. Before leaving, Zhao Yu gives her a word of advice. A human heart must not lose its path and hatred cannot cross the line. Zhao Yu isn't satisfied. He isn't happy. He isn't happy with the fact that the bastard who harmed Li Dan back then still hasn't been found. Zhao Yu halts as three men stand before him. One of them is a short-haired blonde and the other two are tall muscular men standing at either side of him. Li Bani looks at Zhao Yu with confusion dripping from her face as the blonde man points in Zhao Yu's direction, saying he is the one they were looking for. Zhao Yu was just as clueless. The tall muscular man goes flying and lands on his back as Zhao Yu throws a punch at him. The team member from behind orders Zhao Yu not to make a move. He informs him that they are the representatives of the vendors whose goods he trampled over with the camel in the alley. They're here to get compensation from him. Li Bani says that they have formed a debt collection group and have come to their door. Zhao Yu looks at them and thinks what they mean by vendors. They're clearly hooligans who specialize in extorting money. He has seen many such people before. Zhao Yu goes and grabs the short blonde guy by the ear and he winces in pain. Zhao Yu asks him how much money can he extort since he isn't missing any limbs. Even if they wanted to extort money, they should still fake its publicity. They didn't even call any reporters over, and yet they're here making a fuss. The crime department has their prison ready, they can just bring them in with the raise of a hand. The blonde guy sweats profusely. A sweet voice calls Zhao Yu's name from behind. He turns around and the first thing his eyes land on is a full stunning chest in a black corset. It is Xiao Lulu. She offers him $100,000, asking him to accept it. She thanks him and invites him over for dinner in the evening. She looks gorgeous. She rests her hand on Zhao Yu's shoulder. A man working for her opens a briefcase, and the stashes of money sparkle in there. His team leader yells at him furiously, saying he cannot accept it. Zhao Yu smiles politely and moves her hand away as he declines the dinner. And as for the money, he says while holding her hand in front of his face that he will have to trouble her to write a testimony of voluntary donations or else he will be punished in the future. She says it won't be a problem. She gives Zhao Yu her card name as the people around them talked about how he deserves it as he risked his life to catch the assailant. She leaves the department telling him to come to find her if he requires any help in the future. Through the side of his vision, Zhao Yu sees the blonde guy trying to sneak away. He grabs him by the hair and hands a stash of money over to him, telling him to split it among the vendors. Zhao Yu also asks him not to let him find out that they secretly took the money for themselves. The men run out of the department telling Zhao Yu they won't dare to keep the money and that they ensure the money will reach the vendors' hands. They leave saying they shouldn't disturb Brother Zhao while he is working. Zhao Yu watches them leave. He then turns around towards his team members and tells them he will give them a treat at a grand hotel today. The team jumps with joy and cheers up, saying they'll rip Zhao Yu off his money and order some good alcohol. Zhao Yu looks at the board and stares at his picture with Li Dan with a frown. He looks at the name list of the competition and realizes something. Zhao Yu is sitting at a cafe with a cup of coffee placed on the table. He slides the name list across the table, saying these are the final results for the competition that year. He says that they were very close. This means that only the four of them would have gotten benefits from Li Dan withdrawing from the competition. He sits with his head propped up on his hand. He passes the paper over to Xiao Lulu. He goes on to say if the three who had their hands dismembered knew about what happened that year, Li Dan would have been apprehended a long time ago, and she wouldn't have made a move on Xiao Lulu either. Xiao Lulu looks at him in surprise. She gets furious and asks him what he meant by that, and if he thinks that she caused Li Dan to end up in that state. Li Dan intended to dismember her hands, so she is the victim here. Zhao Yu looks at her and asks her if she caused Li Dan to end up in that state, as earlier when he mentioned her, Xiao wasn't doubtful at all. It was because she knew the name of the person who wanted to harm her. She even knew what happened to her. She folds her arms and turns her face away as she says that even if she had participated in the competition twice, it could prove nothing. Zhao Yu looks at her with furrowed brows. He tells her that he went through all of her profiles. To let her compete, her father forged her student and competition records. She participated in the 9th competition too, but couldn't make it to the finals. He adds that the 10th competition was her last chance. Out of the 4 of them, only she had a reason to risk everything, Xiao Lulu lowers her gaze in shame and utters that Zhao didn't have any evidence, and that he is a police officer. They can't accuse anyone without evidence. Zhao Yu reclines in his seat as he closes his eyes. He says that she knew it better than he does and that if it wasn't for the blade, Li Dan's life could have turned out like hers. Xiao Lulu listens with undivided attention. He continues saying her father died from depression and her mother developed cancer. Not only that, but she will also be prosecuted for the assault, with the chance of her dying. He couldn't complete his sentence as Xiao asks him to stop. She cries out with her hand on her chest, saying he has no idea how she spent these past few years. She says that the harm caused would stay with Li Dan for Li's entire life, and it's going to be a shadow of her life forever too. Zhao Yu stares at her utterly shocked. Zhao Yu hands a tissue over to Xiao. She weeps and confesses that she is involved in the matter. Zhao Yu sits and listens as she starts. 18 years ago, a day before the competition, she followed the organization committee rules and returned to the hotel after being done with practice at 3 in the afternoon. In the evening, her father told her that she had left something behind in the auditorium. She tried to follow him but strictly asked her to stay in the hotel room and not go anywhere. Her father would rarely speak to her harshly, but that night he did. That night he returned at 11 p.m. He grabbed Xiao by the shoulders and told her that she must perform well in the competition tomorrow. He had a disturbing look in his eye. Until the prize-giving ceremony that day, she had to run due to the toilet as she was nervous. There she saw Li Dan's mother arguing with the organizing committee. Li Dan's mother was on her knees begging that her daughter cannot be destroyed because of a single blade. She is a piano prodigy, how will she live in the future? That was when Xiao found that Li Dan had withdrawn from the competition due to being cut by a blade in the middle of her piano practice. The time of the incident was on the night her father had gone late at night. Horror took her over. She stood at the podium with dread in her eyes. She really couldn't smile at all even when her father asked her to. She had wished for Li Dan's matter to have nothing to do with her father. When she was packing her luggage ready to head home, she found an entire box of box cutter blades in her father's bag. He entered the room at the same time as she made the discovery. She got into a huge argument with her father that night. Her father fell to his knees and bowed before her. He confessed and begged her to not tell anyone about it. Jumping back to the present, Xiao tells Zhao Yu how her father had divorced early, and he was the only one who raised her from when she was young. He bore everything for her. She wipes tears with the tissue Zhao gave her and further tells him that sometimes her father would work 3 jobs a day and be unable to rest at night. Tears stream down her face and continues about how she didn't want him to go to jail. She sobbed with her head in her hands, trembling, and tells Zhao that it was karma. After that, it was found that he had pancreatic cancer, and he passed away as a result. He was unable to forgive himself for what he did to Li Dan too. After the competition, she never touched the piano ever again. Whenever she saw the piano, her mind would fill up with the images of Li Dan, and her hand covered in blood. Zhao Yu does nothing but stare at her with nothing to say. She wipes a tear off and asks Zhao not to worry. She straightens her shoulders and interlocks her fingers on the table, and says she will hire the best legal team to help Li Dan, and will also get people to take care of her mother. She goes on to say that she knows what happened between Li Dan, and she cannot be settled with money, but she also doesn't want to beg for Li Dan's forgiveness, so she only hopes that things will stop developing in the wrong direction. Zhao Yu looks at her with a satisfied smile and tells her she is doing well. Zhao Yu is at the club doing karaoke in full spirit. His team leader says from behind that he heard Zhao Yu stole 2 cases from Group B. He is on a video call talking to Zhao as Zhao parties with his team. The team leader tells him that he is proud of Zhao and that his leg has stopped hurting because of him. A teammate asks the leader if he has any alcohol to drink and offers to give him some. The old man leader jokingly yells, calling them rascals. Zhao Yu pauses singing as his attention shifts to Wang Fei, the squad's doctor, sitting with crossed legs and a glass of alcohol in her hand, looking beautiful. She tells him it should be her turn to sing now. Zhao Yu looks at her with a smile as the voices from behind tell her that Zhao isn't done singing yet and that they all should have a toast. Li Bainie's voice saying cheers echoes in the club. Zhao Yu asks how the party was. He is in the passenger seat of Wang Fei's car with his head propped on his hand while she drives. Wang Fei asks him how much he drank tonight. Zhao Yu smiles and replies saying he didn't make a move on her yet, so probably not much. Wang Fei tells him that was blunt. She also adds that none of their homes are on this way. Zhao Yu is a little surprised and wonders if she has thoughts about him. She interrupts his thoughts, asking her if he's thinking about the good things now. She tells him that today a body was retrieved from Q Mountain Reservoir, and because of his party she dissected half of it before the party, and will dissect the other half later. Zhao Yu smiles awkwardly as he thinks that she ate with such relish after dissecting a half body. How professional. She tells him that her hands have touched numerous dead bodies and looks at him before she goes on, asking him if he was still planning on making a move. He smirks and asks her what she was talking about. It's not like her touch caused their deaths. By a lady as beautiful as her, he wouldn't mind getting touched to death. Wang Fei is taken by surprise. She passes a soft smile and tells him that they've reached his home. After getting out of her car, Zhao speaks again. He tells her no one is home and asks her if she would like to come upstairs for a bit. He leans on the car's door and says if she wishes to improve her anatomy skills he can pretend to be a corpse. Wang Fei looks up at him smiling and tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. It's night, and Zhao is standing outside his building with an almost sheepish expression, thinking back to how he invited Wang Fei up for a bit and got rejected when she apologized, tucking her hair behind her ear, telling him maybe when she has her scalpel. He is walking up the stairs to his apartment when he finds someone sitting on one of the steps eating something with a crunch. He looks up to find the kid, Jiang Ziaking, munching on an apple. She calls his name and tells him how it's very hard to get a meeting with him. She slowly gets up while she goes on about how he's been having fun playing around. Zhao nervously asks her what she's talking about. He further explains how he was working on a big case. He is cut off when an apple is suddenly shoved inside his mouth. Jiang scolds him that yet he didn't forget to meet up at her parent-teacher meeting. She just wanted to earn some money to relieve the financial burden on her family. Tears start to well in her eyes, making their way down to her chin as she asks if it's that hard. She crouches on the ground, arms wrapped around her legs with her head down, and sobs, scared that if what she did gets revealed, how will she be able to attend school? Zhao pats her on the back, asking her what happened and if he can help her resolve it. She looks at him, no longer crying, and confirms if he really would with a smile. Zhao is dealing with the teacher's home visit, trying his best to keep a smile plastered over his face as Zhang's teacher goes on, saying how with the entrance exams coming around the corner, parents have to do the job of safeguarding their children. Xiaoqing is a good child. Their school has placed heavy emphasis on to cultivate. The teacher's voice fades to the background as Zhao calls Jiang a brat in his mind, and he wonders why didn't she become an actress. Her expression changes faster than a flip of a book. Jiang smiles brightly as she offers her teacher some fruits, to which he kindly declines. Zhao meets her eyes as if trying to confirm if her dad won't be back. All of a sudden, she understands his question and communicates with her own eyes, telling him not to worry, she has his phone location tracked, and that he's still currently at the hospital. He looks away, looking bored, and thinks how boring it is to pretend to be someone's parent. His thoughts drift to the case Wang Fei told him about as he wonders if she's done dissecting that body and if she's at the station right now. After a while, Zhao runs into the Group A's office calling for Sister Xian. He finds her talking to a lady wearing a red shirt. He asks Xian if there is a new case. He drapes his arm over her shoulder and informs her how he wants to take on Wang Fei's case. She smiles at him as he asks her if she's free tonight, so they could discuss the case. The lady in the red shirt interrupts by revealing that Zhao will not be free tonight, and hands him a paper she was holding with a black phone. Xian smiles to herself and thinks that he doesn't have to worry about the case, and that Chu Ping and the rest are investigating it. She also tells Zhao how the station has given him a new phone, and that he should throw away the one that broke. Zhao stares at the officer training list, being assigned as a trainee with confusion coating his features as Xian further tells him to report there in the afternoon after packing up his things. The next day, at the police training ground, Zhao is lying on the floor, his head resting over his palm, one leg flat on the ground while the other propped up. He's going through the new phone as he ponders on how the props given by the system have gotten more and more ridiculous. Telescope, instruments to identify the composition of articles, X3, signal barrier, and air quality meter. Sometimes even a single sneeze can summon the system. His attention shifts to a lady as she enters. She has a well-defined body, her abs slightly prominent, wearing blue shorts and a white sports bra. Everyone around is greeting her, calling her Sister Ing. Zhao stares at her as she drinks from her water bottle. His eyes follow the water trickling down her neck, disappearing under the sports bra as he swears and asks a man beside him who that lady is. The man replies that she's probably a detective. He continues about how she looks really Not that bad, but stops with a huh when he sees Zhao standing up midway through his sentence, going up to her and greeting her. Zhao tells her that she just reached and probably couldn't watch the instructor's demonstration and offers to guide her, holding out his hands towards her. While Zhao and Ying are conversing, two men stand at the back discussing Zhao Yu trying to seduce the lady. Is he crazy? Provoking her will cost him his life. She is the undefeated champion. She is a 2-times marital arts champion and is simply a wrestling master hand. The title undefeated champion is a play on her surname Miaoying. The title is used to refer to Miao Renfeng, a character in the Chinese drama, The Young Flying Fox. She is a shadow cast upon all the male policemen in our city. Not a single one of the criminals she has caught had ended up intact. They were all beaten half dead. The two men wonder if Zhao's life is in danger. Ying takes his hand and agrees. Zhao and Ying are standing in the center of the boxing ring. Zhao explains how he'll first teach her the elbow press. He beckons her to throw her punch at him. Ying's fist flew towards him at lightning speed, which Zhao easily blocks with the BM using a single hand. He tells Ying how simple this is, twisting the hand he blocked, due to which her body rotates until her back is to him. She smiles and tilts her head to look at him as she tells him that she has a way to counter out of this move. When Zhao asks her how, looking all smug, Ying uses her free hand to powerfully punch Zhao over the side of his face, taking him by surprise. In a matter of seconds he saw a kick soaring right towards his face, which he manages to block the last minute, but the force sends him staggering back over the edge. He swears as he rubs his sore cheek with his hand and keeps repeating how it hurts in his mind. He then understands why there wasn't anyone besides her. The main reason was that she's too good at fighting. She stands there not affected at all, massaging the hand he gripped before, as he wonders if they don't dare to approach her because they're too afraid of her. Ying slightly laughs and apologizes, saying she used a bit too much force, and requests him to not get angry. She then asks him if he can teach her the lock. Zhao's black hair covers his eyes as grins like a devil. He tells her that he too has a way to counter out of the elbow press. She asks him what it is. As Zhao slowly stalks towards her, she gets instanced, thinking to herself how she'll let him destroy himself, and see if she doesn't snap his neck. In the flash, Zhao reaches for her, which she avoids by sidestepping. She ponders why didn't he rush towards her face. Zhao only smirks as he carries on to grab both her wrists this time and twists her body until her hands are behind her back against his chest. She orders him to let her go. Zhao speaks in her ear from behind, telling her how her kick injured him and now he can't move. He further frustrates her by offering her to call him Brother Yu and that he'll teach her 2 more moves. She could do nothing but snap at him and call him. Ying's arms are still behind her back, gripped firmly by Zhao. She all of a sudden headbutts him, which sends his face flying back as he lets go of her and cradles his now bruised nose. His eyes turn into saucers when Ying attempts to kick him straight in the face. Zhao stops her kick by holding it halfway, commenting how she has a nice leg. He grins and starts telling her how her enthusiasm almost. But his sentence is cut off short when her free leg shoots right to his chest. He stumbles back as Ying manages to get his head in between her legs and presses down until he's lying on the ground with her one leg under him and the other over, locking him. Zhao only stares at her as she looks down at him with a humph. He surprises her by biting down on the side of her hip as she winces in pain. Ying punches Zhao in the face with a bone-crushing force in return and yells at how much that hurts. Their fight gets interrupted by his team member, who asks the both of them if they're rabid dogs. He tells them to hurry and get up and further exclaims how he's never seen anything like this in 8 lifetimes. Ying holds the side of her hip where Zhao bit her and warns him to not let her see his face again or she'll hit him every time she does. Zhao waves off her threat by agreeing with them not seeing each other's faces and asks who would fear her. The guy who interrupted then yells at them some more, asking if they're finally done. He tells them to scram tomorrow and have their department heads teach them a lesson. The system boots up again with a completion rate of 51% and a new prop, a hidden night vision device. Later at the Q City Hospital, the deputy director yells at them to stop playing around. Team leader Lu stands in the hospital room with his hands in his pockets. He's looking out the window as the deputy director tells him that Zhao is a newcomer and always sloppy. He acts like a ruffian. The deputy asks him if he's sure he wants Zhao to become his successor. Still looking out the window, the team leader praises Zhao's skills, saying that his drive is more impressive than that of the criminals. Lu says he wouldn't tolerate anyone looking down on Zhao in the future. He has already made the due arrangements for him. He suggests they should start with wearing down his temper and aggressiveness first. Zhao and Li Baini stand outside the house of the victim. Zhao asks her if this is the victim's family. The building is like an abandoned house in the ruins. They start walking towards it. Li Bani asks Zhao if he had just gotten back from training and yet he was assigned to the cold case unit by the higher-ups, and asks why he doesn't oppose it a little. He replies by saying he's still solving cases regardless of whichever unit he's in. She asks him if he knows how hard it is to solve these old preserved cases. Zhao Yu says this case has been left unsolved for 10 years because he wasn't there then. He promises her a good food treat after the case is solved. He pushes the old door, and it creaks open. It was an empty hall with a couch placed in the center. There are some bottles on the floor by it. All the paint on the walls is chipped off. There was a big window behind the couch illuminating the hall. 10 years ago, at 8 in the evening, there was a storm accompanied by the peals of thunder. The victim, Yujigan, was passed out dead drunk on his sofa. Zhao imagines a man in a hood approaching you with a knife in his hands ready to stab. At the time of the incident, a vague figure appeared at the estate crossing, but since there were no cameras in the estate, we currently have very little information about the killer. The victim was slashed around 40 times in the front till he died. There weren't any fingerprints or footprints left behind at the scene, and no signs of breaking in on the lock either. It's either that the victim opened the door himself, or the assailant had the key to his house. The assailant had written debts must be repaid on the wall using the victim's blood. If it was out of revenge, they wouldn't have written debts. If it was to get payment for his loan, there wouldn't have been a need for as many as 40 slashes. They had caused the scene to be covered in blood and had even written such superfluous words. Zhao Yu wonders about the assailant's objective. Suddenly his phone starts ringing, and Yao Jia's name pops up on the screen. He attends the video call. She asks him if he's busy and tells him she would like to treat him to a meal. Zhao Yu and Yao Jia meet at a hot pot store. They order a stew. She tells Zhao she wanted to invite him for a long time. It was all thanks to him that her bag wasn't stolen. Zhao Yu takes a bite of the stew, telling her it was nothing. She says the main thing is that the bag was gifted to her by her boyfriend. Zhao Yu stops chewing out of surprise. She has a boyfriend. Yao Jia goes on with how she doesn't want to lose her but pauses. Zhao Yu looks at her with a frustrated expression. He tells her if she has something to say, just say it, as long as it's in his power. Yao's face lightens up as she asks him to investigate her boyfriend. Zhao Yu seems confused. Zhao Yu is sitting in his car with the system in front of him. The completion rate is 59%. He thinks of how her boyfriend is always borrowing money from her. She's worried he's been caught up in something. His team member confirms her boyfriend's name, Tsungjia, and tells him that he'll pass on the information when he is done investigating him. Zhao expresses his gratitude and tells him he will treat him to a game of pool in the future. The teammate says it's better if he treats him to a meal. He doesn't want to play pool as he knows he'll be beaten badly by Zhao and will end up rolling on the ground. He stalks a brown-haired woman and a kid while sitting in his car. Lin Meifeng is the victim Yu Xianjin's wife. She also is the most probable suspect in the case. She had suffered under domestic abuse for a long time. She was once beaten to the point of miscarrying. The deceased had also threatened her entire family before. He had broken her father's leg. The child tells her mother that her shoelace came loose. Zhao continues thinking. That night the deceased was killed, Lin Meifeng was at the hospital. She was accompanied by her cousin, who was in labor. She has a perfect excuse. Lin crouches and ties her daughter's shoelace. When she discovered the body the next day, she was shocked till the point she passed out. It was the neighbor who helped to call the police. After that, she attempted to commit suicide multiple times. She was even hospitalized for depression as a result. She was able to escape the demon's clutches with much effort, and remarried someone else, and was able to live a good life. If she really is the killer. Suddenly Zhao's phone rings. It was the team member. He lets Zhao know that he found the person he was looking for. Tsungjia made counterfeit goods in his factory, and he's shipping them out to the wholesale market today. He also tells Zhao that he will send him the location of him and his warehouse. Zhao Yu follows the location and reaches the wholesale market's warehouse area. The system boots up again. He is walking towards Tsungjia's location. All of a sudden a girl yells asking someone to stop comes from behind. Zhao Yu turns around to find a man with dark long hair running with a bag in his hands. The girl shouts again asking him to stop running and stop right there. It is Ying, from the training center earlier. Zhao wedges his foot in the man's path. He trips on it and falls face first. All of Ying's stuff flies out of the bag and onto the ground. Zhao Yu crouches and picks up a diary and observes it. Ing comes dashing from behind and smacks Zhao Yu's face with her left hand as Zhao shouts a curse in pain. She gives the man a flying kick in the face, telling him she won't let him run away. Zhao Yu presses his hand to his face in pain and curses, wondering if she really took the chance to hit him too. He swats her away, asking her to move, and throws a punch in the man's face, daring him to run again. Ing massages her shoulder, thinking about how he dared to hit her back. They both stare at each other with daggers in their eyes. Zhao and Ing stare at each other with a promise to kill. Ing attempts to kick him in the face at the same time Zhao throws a punch in her direction. In a matter of seconds they start fighting like rabid dogs and a cloud of dust surrounds him. Someone from the street holds Zhao back and asks him to stop fighting. Zhao, with a bruise forming on his cheek, exclaims with anger that he helped her stop him, and yet she repaid kindness with hostility. Ing raises her leg to kick him once again as a lady holds her back, asking her to forget it, and that it's fine now since the criminal has been apprehended. Ing shouts back at him, saying no one knows if he was working together with him. Two men in the background watch over the criminal, talking about how he almost got beaten to death by these two. Zhao threatens to hit her every time he sees her if she appears in front of him again, and Ing couldn't agree anymore. Zhao stares at the location app on his phone with Sung's location on and notices that Sung is getting further and further. He blames Ing for not being able to do what he wanted to. He hisses in pain, thinking how much it hurt, and that she wasn't light with her blows. He reaches down to his pocket and pulls out a wallet. He flips it open and finds a picture of the criminal staring back at him. At least he somewhat benefited from it. He pulls the picture and observes it, wondering about what exactly had this man done, and why did they apprehend him. The picture at the back startles him as he recognizes Lin Mei Feng. It was a picture of her frowning as bruises covered her face. He wonders why does he have a photo of the suspect in his wallet. Later at the R sub-bureau, there is a picture of the criminal. This person's name is Liu Pengfei. He does clothing wholesale. The money in his card, which was in his wallet, adds up to a few million. He also has 3 housing properties and 2 cars under his name. Zhao inquires about how Lin was related to Liu Pengfei. Li Baini, standing beside Zhao, mentions he doesn't have much of a relationship with Lin Meifeng. He was from the same village as Yu Zhigan. Zhao's teammate tells him that this is a cold case from 10 years ago, and yet he was able to find a clue from the wallet he picked up. He comments on how his luck really is out of the world. The system pops up in front of Zhao with a completion rate of 80% and another hidden wiretap. Zhao Yu thinks that the clue appeared because of the happy encounter system. Zhao Yu sits with Lin's picture in his hand as he observes it. He notes that the picture seems to have been taken in secret. He should ask Liu Pengfei, he might recognize Lin Meifeng. Li Baini suggests that he put a woman's picture in his wallet. It could be that he is secretly in love with her. A guy adds that 4 different fingerprints were found on the wallet and are all ready to be compared. He goes on telling that Liu Pengfei is a visitor at the station very often for various fights and scuffles. This time it was because he had caused severe harm to someone and was being investigated by the U sub-bureau. The blonde teammate mentions that they should be interrogating Liu Pengfei at the moment, but he is locked up at the U sub-bureau. Li Baini asks if anyone happens to know someone from the U sub-bureau. An annoyed look takes over Zhao Yu's face as everyone turns toward him. Zhao Yu looks irritated. Zhao Yu reaches the U sub-bureau. He stands there with a smile plastered on his. Ing states that he has quite the guts to be there. She stands with her hands folded as she asks him if he was here to wreck the place. He inches closer to her and says that her words seem to be comparing him to a gangster. He lets her that he was only there for official duty. It just so happened that it was convenient to ask for her help. She returns the papers to him, telling him it isn't enough to be allowed to interrogate Liu Pengfei. They shall discuss it when this is a formal investigation document. He takes the papers back and exclaims that they will miss the chance if they wait for a month to talk about this. He promises that he will make it up to her in the future. He bends to join his forehead with hers as he reminds her that he bid her but the last time and asks her if she is still upset about it. Anger boils up in Ing. She shoves Zhao and tells him anyone can come and interrogate Liu Pengfei except for him. She points a finger in the exit's direction, yelling at him to get lost back to where he came from. Zhao Yu grins slyly and clicks his tongue. Zhao wonders where did this kid come from as Ing stands before him with her arms crossed, looking smug. Her teammates behind her point out why he would even run over to the U sub-bureau. They snigger at how he's waiting for a beating considering he even dared to provoke Captain Yang. Zhao asks with a smirk if they won't let him interrogate the suspect. He swats her away, walking and announcing that he'll make them withdraw into their shells in a minute. He reveals that he has a superpower that can block the entire building from receiving any signal. Zhao perches himself on a desk like he owns the place and advises them to not even try to connect their phones or computers. Ing stares at him in disbelief and asks what before her expression morphs into a taunting one. She repeats the word superpower with a pft. The two men behind her chuckle, questioning if he is delusional or crazy. One sarcastically mentions how he even has a human shielding device, saying how he must have been kicked by a donkey before laughing at him. Ing places her palm flat over the table beside him and leans in close and challenges Zhao if he can cut off the signal for the entire building, she'll let him in. Zhao calls her name before he puts his hand over her shoulder, reminding her she must do as she promised. He leans even close and informs her he's about to activate the incantation. She smacks his hand away, looking the other way. Zhao puts his two fingers on either side of his temples when he chants how Captain Meow is a big stupid cunt. Ing calls his name, brimming with anger, and asks him if he wants to die when she hears someone in the background saying that there's no signal. Teammates asking each other if they have any signal on the second floor. One notifying that the upper levels have no signal, and the seconds reveal that the sensor has no signal either. Ing checks her phone to see there is indeed no signal. She glares at Zhao when he grins and questions if he can interrogate him, now calling her the great Captain Meow. Lu Pengfei, the suspect in the FM slaughter case, sits in the interrogating room when the door slams open, revealing a broody-looking Zhao standing by the entrance. He suddenly staggers forward when Meow pushes him, demanding him to not block the doorway. Zhao and Meow both settle on the chairs in front of Lu. Meow has her arms crossed as she stares at Zhao from the corner of her eyes. As she wonders what on earth is up with this bastard, why was there no signal the moment he said there wouldn't be any? Zhao at the same time is grateful that the signal blocker shut them up. He glances at the lie detector floating in the air and decides to test it too. He explains to Lu that for the following question he asks, he just has to answer with a yes or a no. Lu understands as Meow muses about what he's doing. Zhao starts by asking if he's a man. The light turns green as he replies with a yes. Zhao smiles and thinks he's got it. The green light turns up when it's a truth, and red lights up when it's a lie. He asks Lu if he's a woman, and he replies with a yes, and the light turns green. He then asks if his name is Lu Pengfei. A yes from him turns the light green again. He further asks if he likes rice cakes. He says a no. The light turns green. Zhao asks if his parents are divorced. Lu says no, and the light turns green yet again. Zhao's expression turns into a somber one when he finally questions if he killed Yu Zhigan. Lu tenses up and exclaims a no. The light blares red. Zhao bangs his hand on the table and calls his answer bullshit. The lie blinks red. Zhao Yu grabs Lu by the collar as he towers over him. Ing tells Zhao Yu to calm down and release him. He asks him if he knew his wife, Lin Mei Feng. Lu Pengfei denied, saying no. Ing stands behind with a frown on her face. She considers the fact that Lu Pengfei killed someone and wonders why he got so flustered upon being asked a few questions, and thinks about what is up with Zhao Yu. Zhao Yu sketches a turtle on a piece of paper as he speculates that the guy clearly is the murderer. Waves of disappointment radiate from him as he realizes he doesn't have any evidence. He needs to think of a way. He twists his head and finds Ing standing outside the office. He smirks as he cooks up an idea. He goes over to her and rests his arm on her shoulders. He asks if he could talk to her about something. She asks him to speak. Zhao looks at her puzzled and wonders why she is suddenly being so good-natured. She shows Lu Pengfei a picture of the message written by the culprit of the FM estate slaughter case back then. She states that it matches his handwriting by 91%. The figure captured by the surveillance cameras at the crossing of the estate also matches your physique. She continues by saying that he might have done adequate preparations by not leaving any fingerprints or footprints at the scene, but this was a strand of hair found at the scene and it didn't belong to the victim. She tells him that his DNA matches with it. She piles up all the evidence in front of him. Lu Pengfei is terrified. He denies it and calls them liars. He claims that he wants a lawyer. Zhao Yu looks at him frustratingly. Ing turns around to look at Zhao, thinking that Lu is not taking the bait, and if they should just forget about it. Zhao Yu starts walking towards Lu Pengfei and reaches into his jacket pocket. He asks him to look closely. He takes out a photograph and shows it to him, claiming that other than the physical evidence, there is also an eyewitness. He shoves the image of Lin Mingfei he found in his wallet in his face. Lu Pengfei stutters as he asks Zhao if she told them everything. Zhao and Ing both jolt. Zhao reflects on what it could mean. He puts his hand on the table and attempts to bait him by asking him if he thinks so. Lu Pengfei sat with his head hung low. Ing looks at Zhao in wonder and flashes back to the time her teammate brought her the files on Zhao that she asked for. She muses about how he solved 2 cases consecutively and has gotten the city-level commendation, and yet he was transferred to the most difficult unit, the cold case unit. She wonders if it was because of his temper. 15 minutes earlier, Zhao Yu said to Ing that he is sure Lu is the murderer and asked her to put on a show. He suggested that they cook up some evidence to frighten him so he confesses to his crime. She thinks of him as very persistent. She snaps out of her thoughts as Lu Pengfei speaks in a low voice saying that's right. Silence blankets the room as he confesses that he killed Yu Xing'an. Zhao and Ing look at each other equally astonished. They both give each other a high five thinking as they made him confess. Lu Pengfei confesses. He discloses that Lin and he signed an agreement to trade the people they would kill. Zhao and Ing stare at him with wide eyes. Zhao pictures Lin with her daughter as he digests the fact that Lin Meifeng killed someone too. He tells that he went to the same high school as Yu Xing'an. There he fell in love with a girl named Xiao Qin. Because Yu Xing'an couldn't get with Xiao Qin, he had spread a rumor that he had slept with her. Yu even spread the news back home and made a big show out of it. Everyone at school gossiped about it. They said things like they have heard Yu Xing'an and her have done multiple times. As a result, Xiao Qin was forced to drop out of school and went to another city to work part-time. Lu heard that later she was forced to become a prostitute, so he believed that Yu Xing'an deserved to die. Ing asked him if let Lin Meifeng into his home to kill his wife, Jian Wenli. Zhao Yu thinks that this person even killed his own wife. No wonder she had such a good attitude towards him, and agreed to help. It turns out he had to weed him out first. He looks at Ing and thinks of her as she asks Lu why he killed Jian Wenli. He tells the truth of wanting to kill her for a long time. His wife never had respected him. Lu stood in the doorway as he looks at his wife's clothes lying on the floor. He watched his wife cheat on her. His job and their home was all given to him by her dad while he was the nanny of their family who had to engross himself with work. His wife casually put her clothes on completely unbothered as Lu wept and beat the other man bloody. She only looked at him with blank eyes. After that he was people exchanging murder victims in a show. He approached Lin Meifeng. She had suffered from violence since a long time at the hands of Yu Xing'an. He figured that she must have hated him a lot. Working with her could have helped to get revenge for Xiao Qin and also to kill his wife. But the matter was put aside for a period of time as Lin disagreed to it. In the end, that bastard beat her till the point of miscarriage. She reached out to Lu and told her she has thought about it and made her decision. They recorded themselves as they signed a contract. He continues the story telling he was in the factory the day she killed his wife, and on the day he killed her husband she was accompanying her cousin who was in labor. They both had alibis. He says that he has made enough in these past 10 years and that it is relaxing to finally have it revealed. Zhao Yu and Ing stood there wordless. Later at the barbecue stall, with a loud clink, Zhao and his team members give a toast with jugs of beer. They cheer as they tell Zhao this was a big case which stumped the station or 10 years and asked him if he is the reincarnation of Sherlock Holmes. They talk about how they thought that cases that involved exchanging of murder victims only exist in TV shows. If Xiao had come to the cold case unit earlier, he wouldn't have had such a hard time. Lu Pengfei had quite the guts. He actually found a woman to exchange victims with. They wondered about Lu Meifeng being so frail, and if he was afraid she would fail. Zhao Yu takes a sip from his beer as the system boots up with a completion rate of 90% and 3 hidden surveillance cameras. A few hours ago, Zhao Yu stands in front of Ing holding her hand as he utters the words happy teamwork. Ing lets know him that she reported these 2 cases together to the higher-ups. Their 2 sub-bureaus work together to investigate and prosecute this case. She will send him the real-time progress. He acknowledges and replies saying he will head back to the station to close the case there too. Ing says that she too will go apply for a warrant to arrest Lu Meifeng. Zhao Yu seems to get a little startled by her words. She asks him if something is wrong. Zhao tells her that he was just thinking that she wasn't the killer. Ing tells him that it isn't confirmed yet, and they should wait for her to be brought in. Zhao Yu takes another sip of his beer as he continued thinking about Ing. Not only this woman is good-looking and smart, her hands are soft, and her skin is smooth too. His thoughts are interrupted by his phone ringing. It was a call from Ing. She looks tensed and asks him to come to her immediately. The clouds cover the dark starry sky over the U-Sub Bureau. Zhao Yu comes over sprinting. Ing comments on how came so quick. He tells him he came by a car. He pants uncontrollably as he asks her to hurry up and explain what's going on. Ing stares at him and wondered if he was drunk. He snatches the papers from her hands and looks at them. Ing says that they just interrogated Lu Meifeng. She admits that she used a knife to stab Jian Wenli to death. But Jian's autopsy report stated that she died from asphyxiation. Asphyxiation is the state of process of being deprived of oxygen. The driver had driven too fast just now. Zhao Yu feels bile crawling up his throat and realizes that he wants to puke. He covers his mouth with his hands. Ing continues that the deceased's body was full of stab wounds, but they were all very shallow. But Lin Meifeng confessed, so she had no need to lie. Zhao goes on that the person who killed Jian Wenli could not have been Lin Meifeng. Ing agrees. She points out the many footprints strewn all over the crime scene and that Lin Meifeng said she had worn shoe covers when entering. In order to make it seem like a burglary, she took away the money and goods from the bedroom. However, when the scene was surveyed, everything in the master bedroom was robbed clean. The nausea Zhao felt keeps worsening. He feels like he will throw up any second now as Ing went on about the day when Jian Wenli was killed that there was a third person at the scene. There is a high chance that person choked Jian Wenli to death first before Lin Meifeng came to stab her. Zhao clasps his mouth and tells Ing he can't control it anymore. Ing ignores what he is trying to tell her and doesn't stop talking. She speculates that Lin Meifeng just might have thought that she killed Jian Wenli. She turns her face towards Zhao and is confused when she finds his face half blue. Right in the moment Zhao throws up with barfing sounds. Ing stands there with anger rushing through. She yells Zhao Yu's name so loud that it echoes through the entire building. In the interrogating room, Zhao Yu sits with a bump on his head. He says to Lin that some important questions will be asked from her. She only has to reply with a yes or no. Lin agrees. The first question he asks is if she killed Jian Wenli. She says yes with guilt in her eyes. The lie detector blinks red, leaving Zhao jumbled. He speculates that Lin doesn't seem like she is lying. Then why did the lie detector turn red? He asks her if she stabbed her to death with a knife. Lin admits that she did, and the lie detector turned red yet again. Zhao Yu thinks that either she really believes that she killed Jian Wenli by stabbing her to death, or she is doing this purposefully in order to protect the actual killer. The next question Zhao Yu asks is if she knows who killed Jian Wenli. Lin Meifeng is surprised as she confirms if she was the only one who killed her. Zhao reminds her that she only has to answer with a yes or no. She says yes, and the lie detector blinks red again. Zhao's eyes widen with shock and confusion as he thinks Lin really doesn't know who the true killer is, and she isn't lying. He questions if Jian was already dead when she stabbed her. The question leaves Lin a little confused. She tells that she was really scared back then, and so just stabbed a few times into the blanket, and Jian didn't move at all. Zhao and Ing both sit in silence for a while, taking the information in. Zhao comes to the conclusion that Lin only believed that she killed Jian Wenli and the true killer isn't her at all. He passes a satisfying smile. Later at the roof of the sub-bureau, Ing calls Zhao and states that Lin has already confessed, so they could close the case now. Zhao Yu stands next to her puffing a cigarette as he says that she had already seen all of it. Lin didn't know if Jian Wenli was already dead when she stabbed her to death. As a senior, Ing reminds him that if they close the case now, they will receive endless benefits, rewards, commendations, and records. On the other hand, if they don't close the case, they will have to deal with unfinished work, wasted efforts, and the murderer escaping. Once they launch an investigation after 10 years have passed, Jian's family won't let the police off upon out. When that time will come, it will give way to discussions that will put stress on the police squad. It'd be better if they could find the real killers, but if they fail to, they won't be let off so easily. She continues that Zhao is in the cold case unit. He should know how hard such age-old cases are. Zhao Yu replies with silence and stands there with closed eyes. Ing says that she has already said everything and asks if they should close the case or not. Zhao Yu passes a grin. He claims that if Ing had made her decision on the closing the case, she wouldn't have been here in the middle of the night and said such things to him. Ing is taken by surprise. She passes a gentle and knowing smile. Immediately she straightens her back and lifts her chin, saying she regrets calling him over. She wouldn't have been puked on if she hadn't. Zhao Yu puts his arm on her shoulder and leans in, telling her to be the mature person and not take those offenses to heart, and then catch the murderer together. Zhao is leaning by the door with his arms crossed as Li Baini and the blonde teammate surround him. The blonde teammate asks if that's the culprit of the FM estate slaughter case when the culprit gets taken away but a security guard. Zhao replies positively before mentioning that Yu Sub Bureau is investigating his wife's murderer. He brought him here to close the case first. All of a sudden they see men rushing towards the police car. Confusion fills Zhao's voice as he asks where they're all going. Li probes as she tells Zhao if the culprit of the Q Mountain Reservoir corpse case is an amateur parkour athlete. She further adds how he escaped with the handcuffs half on when catching him the first time. The civilian just made a report. She saw a person with a pair of handcuffs half on at Q Mountain Reservoir 2 days ago, and he looked very familiar to the person in the wanted poster named Yang Wentao. She finishes by voicing that they're going to arrest him right then. Zhao ponders how the culprit hid the corpse in the reservoir, so why does he still dare to hang around the area near the reservoir? The blonde teammate comments how there are so many villages around the reservoir. Finding a single person amongst all those mountains and plains will make things hectic. Zhao grins and flicks his thumb over his mouth, heading out, mentioning he's going to do something as Li rushes after him, telling him to wait for her just as the lady wearing a red shirt informs Zhao that the Commissioner Luan wants to see him. Zhao replies nonchalantly that the leader will never understand, catching a criminal is more urgent. The lady retorts if he doesn't want to be promoted, the rascal only has cases on his mind. 3 days later Zhao and Li are driving to the Q Mountain Reservoir. The props the system gives Zhao these days are either trackers or signal strengtheners. Zhao wonders if it's afraid of him getting lost. Li calls his name and reveals that the villagers all said Yang Wentao fled west of the reservoir before inquiring why he's heading west. Zhao clarifies how heading west doesn't necessarily mean he's headed towards the west side, he could have also headed west from the east before turning back. Recently, everyone has been searching the south and north side, but nothing much has been happening there. Through the window he notices a girl with short, dirty blonde hair and recognizes her as one of Miao Ying's subordinates. He wonders what she's doing here. She thanks Officer Liu and hopes to see him again just as Zhao sneaks in from beside her and asks who was she talking to. She gets startled with an "Oh my god" and stomps away to her car, grumbling how he scared her to death. She enlightens him that Officer Liu retired a few years ago and now resides here. He was the detective in charge of Jian Wenli's case back then. Zhao's mind flashes back to Miao pointing towards the culprit of the FM Estates slaughter case, as she told him to bring him back to the station to close the case first. She'll send someone over to ask the detective who was in charge of Jian Wenli's case back then so she could take a look at what they have left out. Zhao wonders if he was so busy these days that he wasn't able to care about her. She said she would exchange numbers to share about the cases ongoing, but she hasn't sent a single message. He follows the girl and questions what stage is the case at now. He snatches a pen from her hand and confirms if this is the pen she used to record the conversation between the detective and her earlier. The girl thinks when she asked Miao if they should send the information to Zhao, to which she replied that there's no need. They agreed to investigate Jian Wenli's case together, but now that he's running off to the reservoir to arrest someone, he isn't taking this seriously, therefore they don't need to humor him. The girl grasps the pen back out his hand, puts it in her shirt's pocket, and tells him it's hard to inform him about the case's progress. Zhao counters back by saying this case is being worked on by both of their sub-bureaus, so why are they still hiding information? The girl grabs the car door's handle and tells him to find the captain if he has an opinion. Zhao slams his hand over the car's door, preventing it from opening, caging the girl as he states what he wants cannot be given by anyone at the moment. He gets interrupted by Li Baini as she stalks towards him, asking why he suddenly stopped the car. The girl takes advantage of the distraction and speeds away in her car just as Li asks who the girl was. Zhao smirks as he holds the pen he pulled out the girl's pocket while she was caged between him. He grins to himself, thinking she's way too inexperienced to want to play with him. Zhao Yu drives his car as the recording plays. His height is at least 180 centimeters and his right leg is disabled. Also, there was a plaster residue on Jian Wenli's body. The murderer might have pressed her against the wall to choke her to death. Li Baini is sitting next to him going through some files. Zhao's phone starts to ring. He picks it up and hears Ying screaming at him, asking his to return the recording pen. He asks her that he has no idea what she was talking about. Ying yells at him to stop playing dumb. She states that someone wrecked Lin Meifeng's family's stationery store and Lu Pengfei's warehouse was also set on fire. Zhao listens with full concentration as she goes on that Jian Wenli's relatives are already kicking up a fuss, asking the police to hurry up and catch the murderer. She says to him that if he is that skilled he should get there and solve the case. He asks her to send him the information and tells her as soon as the Here case is wrapped up he will go back immediately to investigate. Zhao stops at the gas station. He was standing by his car with the pen in his hands when out of the blue Ying's subordinate appears and snatches the pen from his grip. She mockingly warns him about the many cliffs around the area and asks him to drive carefully as he is unfamiliar with the terrain and not to fall off a cliff. It's difficult to retrieve the body. He clicks his tongue while eating his ice cream. Suddenly he realizes something and thinks about what the girl just said to him about being unfamiliar with the terrain. He runs to Li Bainey and asks her to quickly search what Yang Wentao does for a living. She looks it up and tells him he was a staff member at the Technology Bureau and asks him if anything was wrong with it. He says that staff members participate in field investigations for projects. Maybe he came here before. No wonder he hid near the reservoir. It's because he is the most familiar with the terrain here. He asks her to check if he did a project near Q Mountain Reservoir at his previous job. She exclaims that she got it, White Town Silver Mine Exploration Project. He was on it for 3 years. He definitely came here countless of time. She adds that White Town is right down there, and that Zhao really hit the mark right. Zhao Yu grins and says let's go to the White Town. The moon shines bright in the sky above the motel Zhao Yu and Li Bainey decided to spend the night at. Li Bainey sees Zhao and asks him why was he still up. It is late. He tells her to sleep first, she tells him good night, and goes to sleep. Zhao Yu takes a bite from his chicken and speculates that he worked on a silver mine exploration, so maybe he is hiding in the mines, but there are so many mines here. He observes that the map application opened on his phone. His attention diverts as he hears a dog bark. He looks up from his screen to find a brown dog barking and wagging its tail. It was missing an eye. He looks at his chicken leg and considers giving it to the dog. He tells the owner of the motel that he will have another chicken leg. The dog chomps on the chicken leg and Zhao Yu watches it with a smile, asking it to eat. He continues to think of the case, pondering if the culprit was hiding in the mines then what he eats. Maybe he hides during the day and runs to town for food at night. He shows the dog a man of the culprit, saying it'd be great if it were a police canine. He asks it if it recognizes him and can help looking for him. Zhao Yu laughs at himself and utters that he has drank too much. He's taken by surprise as the dog woofs and pounces towards the terrain. Zhao Yu straightaway gets up and follows it, marveling over how the dog can actually track people. The dog halts and sits. Zhao Yu stops behind it. He questions if this was where the culprit is, but his face drops as he finds dog poop coiled in front of him. The dog looks up at him with the proudest expression. He makes a disappointed face as he says can't stop a dog from eating shit. Suddenly he hears a clink from the woods behind. All of his senses heighten as he hears a clink from the woods behind. He whirls and shines his phone's flashlight in the dark. He sees a man running away from him, and he hears a jingle. He focuses on the hand of the man. He has one of his wrists locked up in the handcuffs. Immediately he flashes back to what Li Bainey told him about the culprit. He recognizes that this was him, saying he's not getting away this time. Zhao prowls through the dark forest with the flashlight of his phone clutched in his hand, cursing to himself. He can't see anything. While running he realizes that the culprit is a professional parkour athlete, and he's familiar with the terrain there. Considering he can't see anything, he definitely won't catch up, it's too dark. He suddenly remembers, grinning to himself, if he doesn't use the system now, then when? He activates the night vision device and looks around, wondering where the culprit is, when he finds him wearing a hood covering his face. Zhao huffs and puffs as he runs around swearing. Sweat gathers over his face, dripping down his cheeks as he wonders where that guy went when he hears a dog barking. It sprints towards him, wagging its tail, and goes straight inside a cave. With a determined face, he decides to trust the dog and follows it in, shouting an okay. He runs, trying to catch the culprit fleeing after him, the clink and clanks of the handcuffs echoing through the walls surrounding him. Zhao jumps and kicks the culprit on the back, causing his knees to buckle as he falls forward. Zhao holds his arm behind his back in an attempt to cuff him when the culprit swings his pocket knife towards his face, barely away from slicing his nose. He strikes again, this time inches away from his eyes, and he manages to cut him over the cheek and rushes away. Zhao follows him and watches him crawl through a hole in the wooden wall. The culprit hides beside the hole with his hand held out, holding the pocket knife, ready to strike Zhao once he enters. The man hides behind the wooden planks with his knife clutched tightly in his hands. There is silence from behind, and he wonders where did Zhao go, and why can't he hear anything. Suddenly Zhao Yu kicks the planks from behind and sends the man and his knife flying. Zhao looks down at him with a pity smile and mockingly asks him who he thinks he is, trying to beat him. The man tries reaching for his knife. He turns around to stab Zhao, but his face is met with a hard punch. Zhao Yu comments on how he likes holding knives. He pushes the culprit through his nostrils, making him fly over to the wall behind him while telling him that he will let him hold his fill, and all of a sudden Zhao Yu starts feeling a little dizzy. He massages his head as he says what is happening to him. He thinks that this much activity shouldn't be happening. He turns around as he hears the barking sound again. It's the same dog who led him to the culprit. Zhao speculates on why the dog isn't coming over to where he is. Right then, the system boots up with a warning of high carbon dioxide detected and tells him to evacuate. Zhao Yu realizes that there isn't enough oxygen in there, just as he expected. He takes the handcuff and cuffs himself with the other free half of it. He drags the man by his hand, thinking of getting out of there. Zhao Yu pauses as he finds a bag placed in between two rocks. He takes out his phone and notices that there aren't any signals there. The system turns green, saying the air quality is good. He contemplates figuring out a way to get them out of there. He remembers the props and takes out a USB-looking thing, a hidden locator and signal strengthener. He lets out a little laugh. He calls Peng Xian and tells him he has sent him a location. Peng Xian tells him they will head right over and will be there within 2 hours. Zhao Yu looks over at the bag again. It is very stuffed, and Zhao wonders about what must be inside it. He unzips the bag to find it full of money. There's got to be at least 100,000 here. He notices that they're really old and have probably doubled in value by now. Why would there be so much money in an abandoned mine? He looks over at the long mine. Zhao Yu stares at a Polaroid picture of him and the culprit. 2 officers standing behind him discuss that the civilian who made the report clearly said that the culprit fled west. So how did Zhao catch him from the east side, as he was supposed to investigate the south side? They think of Zhao as amazing, as question how he knew that culprit was hiding in the mines. Zhao walks over to his car and tells his teammate to pick Li Bainey up from the Y Hotel from room 211 when they head back, and that he will leave first as he is dead tired. The teammate acknowledges. The dog sat by Zhao's car looking up at him with hope. Zhao sighs and tells him to get on. He admits defeat and drives home with him as the dog woofs with joy. Zhao reaches his building and walks up the stairs. The system boots up, notifying his of a new prop obtained. It is a hidden X-ray vision device effective for 10 minutes only. The dog walks in front of him, happily wagging his tail. Zhao Yu takes in the fact that the system props were extremely useful today. The dog pauses and sniffs a sandal and woofs. Zhao Yu enters and finds a pink-haired sitting with her eyes closed. She has what looks like bruise on her face. The girl opens her eyes, groaning and saying something stinks. She sees the dog sniffing her really close to her face. She freaks out and yells at the sight of it. Zhao Yu asks her if she was sleeping in the hallway in the middle of the night. She tells him that she forgot her key and that she thought she'd rest by the door while waiting for her roommate, Sister Hong, to return. Before she knew it, she fell asleep. Zhao Yu noticed the injury on her face and wonders if someone hit her. He offers her to come in and take a break. Water falls from a shower head like rain. The pink-haired girl asks Zhao Yu the name of his dog as she shampoos the dog. Zhao sits there eating a banana and tells her he named him Shit-Sniffing Expert. She misunderstands what he had just said and calls the dog Literature and History, and says that she will get it all cleaned up. The dog woods in approval. As Zhao Yu hair dries the dog, he realizes that the dog is actually pretty damn good looking. The pink-haired girl informs him that it is a Belgian Shepherd. She continues telling him that they're used as tracking dogs by the police force. Her family specializes in breeding dogs. She grew up on a dog farm. Zhao Yu takes it in and asks her how old the dog is. She picks up a banana to eat and says it is 2 to 3 years old. There's a knock on the door, and she goes to receive it. A woman with hazel eyes asks her how she ended up next door, and tells her that she heard her voice and came over to check. The pink-hair girl sweats nervously as she eats the banana, and Zhao Yu and his dog just sit there, stare at both of them. The girl with hazel eyes assumes the worst and walks away furious. The pink-haired girl follows her, telling her she has a misunderstanding and that she only gave the dog a bath and got dirty. Zhao says to the dog that they hadn't done anything. He didn't have any bad intentions. The dog listens and agrees with him. Later at the hot pot restaurant, Li Bainey proclaims that she isn't even done with the report for closing the FM slaughter case, and Zhao already arrested the Q Mountain Reservoir murderer. She goes on with, even if she typed enough to get callus on her hands, it still wouldn't be enough to catch up to his crime-catching speed. Group B got a new office assistant, so team leader Chu Ping asked her to train them. Zhao questions if they solved the nursing home burglary case while pouring juice in Li Bainey's glass. Li Bainey replies by it was an inside job. A security guard set his sights on the $1 million donation in the director's office. She notices a few customers leaving the restaurant as they talk about a group of gangsters making trouble. They walk out deciding not to eat here in the future. She goes on telling Zhao that the guard adjusted the angle on the monitors in the nursing home and hid the stolen money in the nursing home's cellar. Zhao Yu inquires about how the guard got in. She says that because there's absolutely no record of the suspect, team leader Chu Ping decided that someone on the inside committed the crime. When interrogating the security guards one by one, they found a bunch of new keys in the belongings of one of the guards. He had duplicated them himself recently. They opened the director's office, monitor room, and the cellar. As soon as they investigated that lead, they solved the case. Zhao Yu asks her about the guard duplicating the keys recently. The chaos in the background gets louder as the workers beg the gangsters, telling them they can't sell the restaurant, and it's their ancestral property, asking them to stop bothering them in the future. One of the gangsters asks what he means by bother. They are also customers here. One of the gang members tells a man eating that he has eaten enough, and he should hurry and leave if he is full. The man continues eating patiently, and asks the gang member that what if he isn't full yet. The gang member smashed a glass bottle on the man's head, ordering him he was told to get out. And if he is dumb. The man calmly rests his hand on the table as the gang member yells at him to stop with the chit-chatting. Zhao Yu and Li Bainey silently observe the situation. A nerve pops up in the gang member's forehead out of rage. He curses and charges towards the man on the table, while holding the half-broken bottle in his hand. Fear and confusion covers the man's red face, widening his eyes as he sweats anxiously. At the same time at their branch, the section chief announces that Su Chang is at their branch. He explains to his members that in order to finish the important work appointed by the ministry, they must fully cooperate with him for the next few months. Xian inquires about where Zhao Yu is as Su Chang mentioned that he wanted to see him. She figures that he must have gone out with Li Bainey. Two of the office members talk about Su Chang as one of them asks about why such a big-shot official was sent to their little branch here to investigate. He questions about what he looks like and if he is intimidating. The other answers him by saying that he doesn't know if he looks intimidating, but he has heard he is very tall, his face is really red, and that he seems almost like a drunkard. The man with the red face eating at the table stares with surprise as he sees a bunch of food flying across his face. The gang member winces in pain as his face suddenly gets smacked with something hot. Zhao Yu stands behind the man and strikes his hand with a pair of chopsticks, causing him to drop the bottle he was holding. Zhao Yu points the chopsticks towards the gang member and says to him that if he wants to eat, then he shall eat. He then offers him if he would like to sit in a police station. The gangsters freak out that Zhao's a cop and decide to leave. Zhao sits back in his place, commenting on how noisy it is and asking Li Bainey to eat as the gangsters run away. Li Bainey is on the phone, and she tells them that they will be there right away. She tells Zhao that the team is about to welcome the leader who was sent by the ministry, and they want them to hurry back to the team right now. Zhao takes a bite of his food as the man with a red face looks at him with a smile. The branch chief thanks Chief Su for the speech he gave. He tells Su that everyone will fully cooperate if he needs to use any of their departments in the future. Chief Su smiles and agrees. Chief Su says that he heard that their office has someone called Zhao Yu who has solved a few big cases successfully. The office people point towards Zhao while Zhao is on call with someone and telling them to investigate who copied the keys to the victim's house. Chief Su says that he is not sure who he is. Zhao Yu looks at Chief Su as he approaches him and extends his hand for Zhao to shake. He tells Zhao that he was just transferred here today and that they will work together from now. The people in the back wonder about how Zhao Yu knows the provincial leader and if he has connections in the province. Zhao recognizes him and shakes his hand. Chief Su Yang invited Zhao to a dinner treat tomorrow night, saying if it wasn't for him he would have taken a hit in the face. Zhao says that it's nothing and invites him to a welcome dinner. People around them watch them with popped eyes as they question how Zhao Yu knew him and that Su Yan even invited him to dinner first. They say that the major crimes department is too enigmatic and that they're glad they didn't offend King Zhao Yan. Later, Zhao is walking back to his room as he hears a man yelling asking Hua Hua to stop hiding and if she doesn't come out he is going to break the door. He watches the scene as Hua Hua's friend with the hazel eyes yells back through the door saying Hong's Teo beat someone up and still came to bother them, is he even human? One of the men curses her and tells her she can't differentiate between good and bad and that his master Hong only wants to take her out, which is a blessing she cultivated while spending 8 lifetimes. The man kicks the door. Zhao Yu speculates if he is the guy who hit Hua Hua, the pink-haired girl's face. He smiles and thinks who cares who he is and that he should play around a little first. He calls everyone from behind. The men turned around and see him walking towards them. He introduces himself as Brother Tianba and asks them who they were. The men ask him who is Brother Tianba. They introduce Hong's Teo from C Street. The other one tells him he has never heard of a small fry like Brother Tianba. He says that so it's Master Hong who came to visit. He tells him that he heard people say that the largest bar on CST has the best quality goods, even Master Hong doesn't have them. They get furious and tell him that all the goods there are managed by Master Hong. Zhao and his recording and says that Master Hong is indeed a big shot as he gives them a thumbs up. Then he passes a devil's grin and asks them if he beats Master Hong abandoned he is disabled, then the name Brother Tianba will spread around right. He cracks his knuckles with a grin on his face. After a few bangs and thanks and groans it finally gets quiet. Hua Hua and her hazel-eyed friend stand behind the door saying that it's quiet and wonder if they left. They silently pick through the door and find Ruby sitting on the gangster's face. He says that he sent the recording to the police, and they'll be here to arrest them soon. Just selling goods and forcing women to prostitute themselves is enough to put Master Hong in jail for the rest of his life. Both of them express their gratitude to Ruby, saying if it wasn't for him, but they were cut off, as Zhao tell him that he didn't do this work for nothing. He asked both of them to go inside and wash up and then come to his house with some special service video. They both look at him with questions in their eyes. Two girls walk up the stairs and one of them asks the others if she is also in the police. She tells her that about a big bunch of police came barging in just now and took 3 people away and asks her if she is one of them. Ling tells her that she is only here to find someone. The girl leads her to Ruby's door, telling her that he lives right here. The door was slightly open. Opens the door and finds Zhao lying on his stomach and 2 girls giving him a body massage. Zhao Yu lays there getting himself massaged by 2 girls as watches him with surprise. Zhao Yu notices her presence and freaks out and asks her why she is here. Looks at him angrily. She tells him that they need him to come to the suburb to help with the case of Jian Wenli's murder. She already spoke with his leader. She looks at him disappointedly and says that he seems very busy as 2 girls lean on him dreamily. He says that he isn't busy at all and asks her to hold on so he can go and change his clothes. They walk down the stairs. Zhao Yu looks at walking by his side and blushes as he notices that she seems more beautiful now. He blushes even harder as he thinks of using that hidden X-ray vision device on her and pictures her taking a shower. She notices him staring and asks him what he is staring at. Zhao Yu seems embarrassed and tells her that he was just thinking that the real murderer has been caught, so what will happen to Lin Meifeng now? As sits in the car, she states that it was a premeditated murder. So now it depends on them how they will handle this. They drive away as she continues with saying that her husband said that he'd find the best lawyer to defend her. She guesses that it will turn out alright. A roasted chicken lays on the plate, and a pair of chopsticks pick up a piece of garlic. 2 voices in the background are talking about the killer Mijuan having a right foot disability, and that he's from the same village as Jian Wenli. They say that his older brother also works at Jian Wenli's family clothing factory. He already knew that her family has money. Zhao Yu picks up a big piece of ginger and offers it to Ing, saying that it will help her to revitalize her body. The 2 people at the back continue talking and saying if he recognized the fact that the person who asked him to copy the key was Jian Wenli's husband Lu Pengfei, so he made an extra copy of their house key. The other voice agrees and says he also heard from his older brother that the Jian Wenli and Lu Pengfei would be doing inventory at the factory that night and wanted to steal some valuables from their house. Ing swats the ginger piece away and it falls back into the plate. One of the men talking in the background comes to Zhao Yu and asks him how he figured out that this case had something to do with the person who copied the key. The people in the background are saying that Mijuan also didn't know that Lu Pengfei would have Jian Wenli stay at the home in order to get her killed. The other one agrees and adds that he unexpectedly ran into Jian Wenli, then he went to rob them and strangled her out of desperation. Then he placed her back on the bed. By the time Beach got there, Jian Wenli was already dead. She just closed her eyes and stabbed the corpse a few times. Zhao Yu tells him that Lin Meifeng mentioned this before, that when she went to Jian Wenli's house the door was locked. Then he questions about how the murderer got inside. He adds that the evidence showed that there were no signs of the lock being picked, so the murderer might have used a key to open the door. Then where his keys came from. That's the reason he suspected the person who copied the key. The people in the background marvel at Zhao Yu. Ing looks at him frustratingly, and thinks that he's pretending to be cool. She utters that Officer Zhao Yu is meticulous and quick-witted, and that is a good quality for detectives. Zhao Yu smiles sheepishly and thanks her. She adds that when she went to his house to pick him up earlier, she also saw his two girlfriends. One was rubbing his shoulders while the other was massaging his legs. Such a happy life. He looks at her with a raised eyebrow and wonders if she is praising him or hurting him. He says that Ing is also a brave and strong martial artist. Last time he was beating so badly that he couldn't even retaliate. In the end, all he could do was take a bite out of her butt. Ing gets frustrated and slams her hands on the table, yelling his name. She kicked him out, yelling that she never wants to see him again. Zhao walks down the road trying to book a ride, frustrated how Miao was the one who started the conversation. How could she dish it but couldn't take it when he said something? He kicks a pebble in his way as it skids away. He wonders how come he couldn't even call a ride. He irritatingly thinks of Miao Rafeng as an idiot for choosing such a remote place to eat. He swears as he wonders what her deal is, yelling that she doesn't ever want to see him again, and then kicking him out. His gaze lands on two men crouched by the wall cheering and laughing while drinking from a green bottle, and he mischievously grins as he thinks he's found some helpers. After a while, Miao walks out the restaurant to see a man urinating over her car, creating a splashing sound. Fury overtakes her, and she rushes to him, calling him an asshole. She kicks him on the head with such force that the drink in his mouth spews out, and asks him if he's looking for death. While she chases him, yelling at him to stop, Zhao stands behind a car laughing gleefully. The guy's partner looks at the scene in front of him with horror, and swears, saying he didn't know Zhao's woman was that crazy. Zhao's gaze falls onto men crouched by the wall in front of him, cheering and laughing, drinking through a green bottle as he grins mischievously, thinking how he's found some helpers. He catches their attention by calling them brothers. He points somewhere behind him and asks if they see a car over there. He explains how the owner of the car, HIC, a woman, treated him badly. He nonchalantly asks them to help him piss on her car and to let her take a good look at herself. The man with the brown beanie asks him who he is and tells him that he's got the wrong person. In response, Zhao pulls out a $500 bill and tells them that after finishing the job, this $500 is all theirs. The guy with the brown beanie mentions how Zhao is probably drunk. The guy in the blue beanie replies to him by saying it's fine if he doesn't want the $500. If he doesn't piss, then he will piss himself. The guy in the brown beanie stands up and walks towards Miao's car, grumbling how he wanted to take a leak anyway. He looks both ways before taking a leak when Miao walks out and catches him doing this and yells out asshole. Zhao chuckles, hiding behind a car, daring people to just try and play him as the guy in the blue beanie rushes to help his friend, yelling out why this lady is hitting people and shouting for help, saying someone's getting killed. Zhao's eyes go over a shop with glass walls as a man inside questions why did he hear Gao shouting and to go see what's going on. He observes that room through the window and wonders if something is not right with those things. He questions if those people are smugglers. Zhao swears as he looks back to see burly-looking men walking towards Miao, speaking how dare they mess with their people. Zhao panics, thinking how come there are so many guys and how it's over. He fucked up. He hurries into the crowd trying to squeeze his way to Miao, roaring at people to move out of his way. The people around encourage the men to get her, and some exclaim how this bitch can fight. He manages to cross the crowd to see Miao fly kicking a man. A guy creeps up behind her in an attempt to hit her with a stool. She moves away just in time and sees Zhao kicking him in the face. She looks at Zhao, cheeks turning pink, as she thinks that he's helping her. Out of nowhere, a man appears as he tries to land a jab over her, which she dodges by moving her head out of the way. She grabs him by the hair and knees him in the face, making his tooth fall out as blood splatters around. She dodges yet another punch. Her back bumps into Zhao in the process, unbeknownst to her, and she elbows him right in the face but apologizes sheepishly after realizing it's Zhao. He just stands there holding his face, thinking how she's hitting him again as she continues fighting. He calls her name and shoves away everyone in his way, saying to himself how she's finished as he stalks towards her. He grabs her by her shoulder, spins her towards him, and crashes his lips over hers, taking her by surprise. Miao stands there speechless as Zhao kisses her. When she overcomes the shock, she pushes him away using all her strength. She says his name before calling him a bastard. Zhao shows no emotion on his face and lets her push him away as he stands there hunched up. The policemen from crime department rush towards him, flabbergasted as they exclaim what kind of situation this is. Why are there people all over the floor, and if Zhao Yu just kissed Miao Ying before calling for him? Zhao keeps a blank face and instructs them to arrest the people as they're all smugglers. Miao watches the policeman acknowledge his order, as Zhao leads them away, telling them to follow him, explaining how all their loot is in the room ahead. She bites her lower lip before wiping her mouth and thinks that Zhao is a man. Zhao punches the wall beside the shower head as he stands shirtless in his bathroom, thinking how he could be so reckless. He glares at his reflection in the mirror in front of him, wondering if Miao was to get hurt because of this incident, he will no longer be someone who will fight to the death, and does things without considering the consequences. He rests his head over the mirror, water trickling down face and chest, staring at himself in the mirror. He walks out the bathroom looking lethargic, and sees that Yang Hong sent him a message. His eyes bulge out, and he swears when his gaze lands upon two girls sprawled over his bed in flimsy clothes, sleeping soundly. The message shows Yang apologizing to Zhao for the disturbance, but they fear that the people under Boss Hong that are yet to be arrested will come back for revenge, so the girls will be borrowing his house for a while. Yang ends his message with another apology. Zhao wonders incredulously if they moved in just like that. They covered the whole bed, however Zhao thinks he wants to sleep on the bed too. He attempts to crawl in between them. He ends up getting kicked of the bed with thump. At the R branch, Zhao drops the bag of money he found in the mines on the table. He asks his teammate that he heard he's an expert, and if he could help estimate the value of a bundle of old banknotes Zhao has. The guy agrees and questions if they have consecutive serial numbers. He observes the cash and tells Zhao that they could easily be worth around 200,000 yuan. Li Baini seems shocked at his words and asks Zhao if he hit a jackpot, as that it's a lot of money. The man exclaims that they also have consecutive serial numbers and that could make their value increase by 5-fold. Zhao takes in the fact that he got so much money. It seems like the happy encounter system wants him to get rich. His thoughts are cut off as the guy calls his name, stuttering. He looks at the bag carefully and inquires about where Zhao got it. Zhao asks him what the matter is. His voice raises as he realizes and tells that it is ransom money. The evidence from the M Major kidnapping case. This is the money the family of the M Major kidnapping case handed over to the kidnappers. Everyone looks at him with popped eyes. He sweats out of nervousness as he asks Zhao what connection he had with the kidnappers. Zhao Yu grins and asks him to guess. Li Baini speaks about an incident that took place 26 years ago. Because the education system in M City is rather bad, the elite families sent their children to study in cities with better schools. They hired a taxi driver named Niu Weiguang, exclusively to drive the children to and from school. The driver looked in the rearview mirror to watch the girl who asked him to turn on the radio so they can listen to some music. He told her that the radio is broken and that he hadn't found the time to get it fixed yet. He asked her to sing them a song that she had learned in school. All the children in the car cheered up and raised their hands to sing the songs they know. She sings the song called Youth. They all sang and hummed the song that goes, on the banyan tree by the pond. The cicada called for spring loudly. On the swing by the playground, only butterflies rest on it. The van drove through a tunnel and then got on a quiet and empty road that led to the dark. As the children continued singing, the chalk left by the teacher on the blackboard are still desperately writing. The police cars all gather near the mine at midnight as a helicopter flies over them, illuminating the area. All the units are asked to pay attention as they are told that the ransom was found nearby, and are ordered to search the surroundings to find more clues. The rain is falling with a pitter-patter as Li Baini is standing wearing a raincoat and holding her tablet in her hands as she continues narrating the story. She goes on about how after 3 days after the van disappeared, the kidnappers contacted the 5 families and demanded a ransom of 2,000 from each family in exchange for their children to be released. But after the families paid the ransom, all the kidnappers, hostages, and ransom disappeared. For over 26 years, no clues were found. Zhao Yu listens carefully to all of it with a cigarette pressed between his lips. Li Baini shows him a picture of the random bag that had S missing corner on the side with the butterfly, which is identical to the bag that he found. Zhao looks at her with his side eye as the blonde team member states that Zhao Yu had found such a big clue in a place this remote, and that too while arresting people, and that sometimes he seriously wonders whether Zhao Yu is a god or not. Zhao Yu realizes that it is the system again. It was strange, to begin with, to have found so much money in an abandoned mine. He watches over 2 people discussing what can be dug out from this type of abandoned mine. The guy guesses that there's probably nothing here and that it's going to be a pointless trip. Zhao Yu thinks that it'll be best if it is just a wasted trip. There is a call for all units to pay attention, informing them that something was found. The news startles everyone. The news reporters bombard the crime department with tons of questions. They inquire about the case by stating that the remains of the people who disappeared 26 years ago were found at the mine. They ask if all of them are found and when will the information be publicized. It's said that the leaders of the city bureau have also arrived. They question if it is true that the family members of the deceased invested millions of bounties to catch the true culprit. The member of the crime department answers all those questions by simply saying that if they have information they will inform them, but he has nothing to tell them right now. He asks them to step back as all the news reporters stand with their microphones in his face. Zhao Yu closes his eyes in disappointment as wonders who would have guessed that the people buried under the mine for 26 years were a group of kids. He walks towards the meeting room with his head hung low and hands in his pockets. He opens the door as the host is going on about starting the meeting regarding the case analysis of M City's large-scale kidnapping case. Among the seats he finds Li Bainey waving her hand signaling him to over and sit there. Zhao Yu sits down as the host mentions that 5 complete skeletons were found in the collapsed mine. After comparing the DNA, it is confirmed that the 4 of them are the kidnapped children. Liang Meili, 9 years old, Liang Shihan, 12 years old, Tao Xiao, 11 years old, and Lu Xianghong, 10 years old, respectively. The driver, Niu Weiguang's skeleton was also found there. Zhao Yu thinks hard to put the pieces of information into place. At night in the police station, Zhao Yu looks out the window. The moon is peeking from behind the clouds as the stars surrounding it sparkle. He flashes back to a couple of hours ago when Chu Ping introduced the parents of the kidnapped Tao Xiao, 11 years old. She introduced him as Officer Zhao, who found the crime scene. The father expressed his gratitude as he shook hands with Zhao with his shaking hands. His eyes welled up with tears as he cries that if it weren't for Zhao, his son might have just disappeared forever. He was able to find Zhao's corpse in his lifetime. He stutters as he finds the words to speak while the mother wept as she trembled. The father sobs and begs Zhao while holding his hand to find the culprit. Zhao looks up at the moon and speculates that the only corpse that was not found was the 7-year-old, Liang Cixi. If she is still alive, she would be 33 years old. He wonders if he will be able to find her based on the drawing the professional had sketched out. He sees a room with the lights on and thinks about who is still there as it is very late. He walks up to a door to find a girl standing. It is Chu Ping. She is always like that when it comes to cases, doing her best and not giving up a thread of hope. He stares at her from behind as she investigates the case. She notices him standing and asks him if he has any advice to give. He leans against the wall with his arms folded against his chest and laughs as he says that he is only there to learn from her. She humps and says that she detests people like him, but she doesn't detest his ability.